My pleasure. Mr. Baybayan, in your employment description that you provided, it says that you're currently employed in the Malama Honua project.
I'm currently working on the Malama Honua project. Excuse me.
And who is your employer to do that?
University of Hawaii.
University of Hawaii. Thank you. So in recent times, the ancient navigation skills had fallen into disuse. There were very few practitioners. Is that correct?
I think it's is accurate to state that there was no traditional practitioners of the art by the time of, just to pick a date, by the time the Westerners arrived in Hawaii.
Okay. And to bring back the art of navigation, people like Nainoa Thompson and others reconstructed what had been the art of navigation.
Yes, I like to use the term re-engineered.
Re-engineered, okay. And part of that re-engineering was done by consulting academic sources.
Yes, he based his system on the primary source in his beginning of the reconstruction was academics.
And when you use the word the system, can you tell me what are the components within the system?
Okay, so in a system of non-instrument navigation, and there's two terms we like to describe the art. One is non-instrument navigation, and that was probably pre-1985, and then it evolved into wayfinding as a descriptor for the art. You need a system of orientation, so you need a compass. You need to use celestial bodies, both the daytime star and the nighttime stars, to orient your compass. You also employ the use of the wind direction and the oceanic swells, as well as the movement that you internalize as you travel down a course. There's only.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that. The movement, what?
The movement of the canoe that you internalize. There's a certain pattern, right? Because the wave and the wind are coming from a certain direction, and you're holding it. So you internalize this movement. Now, if for some reason the movement becomes disfamiliar, then two things have happened. Either the conditions in the environment has changed, or that you're off course and you need to bring the canoe back. So just to summarize, there's three things you need to do in a system of wayfinding or non-instrument navigation. One is you need a system of orientation. This is a star compass. Number two is you need to be able to position yourself along a course line. So in other words, you need to estimate about where you are. And the third thing, and the most important thing, is you need to make a landfall.
Make a?
Landfall.
Landfall. Right. So you've mentioned the star compass, and you also said that there was no room on the canoe for modern equipment, and at the same time you said there was a chart plotter and there was a GPS unit.
Yes, I did say that. What I was alluding to was that there's no room on the canoe for a large structure.
Gotcha.
But there is for small technology.
So would a non-instrument navigator use a chart plotter?
Well, on the current voyage we're on, chart plotter is necessary, as well as, well, a chart plotter, because we are in waters that the canoe is actually, it's got no business being in. We're north of the tropics. We have to deal with fog. We have to deal with unfamiliar coastal navigation. So we rely on the chart plotter to get us through these difficult circumstances.
So on those routes, your internalization wouldn't help because you don't know where you are.
Well, we don't know where we are, except that we plan out every segment of the trip. We look at maps and charts. We transfer that information to an electronic chart plotter, and so we balance the digital technology with actually paper, looking at a paper map.
I guess my bottom line question there is, are you still a non-instrument navigator even though you use a chart plotter?
Not in those instances. When we're navigating with instruments, we're not. We're an instrument navigator. We're basically reverting from non-instrument navigation to coastal piloting.
Okay. So going back to the re-engineering of the art of navigation, where we are today, a great part of that has been restored. Would that be correct?
We have the elements for what we can speculate to be a non-instrument navigation system because the knowledge, the traditional knowledge was not lost. We have to re-engineer, and we cannot say in exact terms that the way we navigate is the way our ancestors navigated. But because it doesn't involve instruments, we think we're fairly close.
And that's why you use the term hybrid.
It's a hybrid. It's based upon academics, and it's based upon traditional techniques.
In your testimony at the top of page 2, you discuss the Hawaiian use of stone from the Adze Quarry on Mauna Kea, and you term the tools developed as Neolithic. Do you see that?
Yes.
Would you explain your use of the term Neolithic?
Prior to contact and the introduction of metal, stone tools was one of the primary sources for a traditional toolkit. There was also shells and sand and other natural elements.
And were those tools used primarily in agricultural endeavors and canoe making?
No, I mean, they were used for utilitarian purposes like shaping beams for a house, shaping idols, making weapons to defend themselves.
And so you would define the Neolithic age for Hawaiians as ending when contact brought metals.
Yes, because upon contact there was a transfer of metal.
You touched on various historical figures that were involved in what you call the abolition of the traditional Hawaiian faith. Is that correct?
Yes, in my verbal testimony.
Right. So you mentioned people like Liho Liho and Kahumanu as being involved in the abolition of the traditional Hawaiian faith.
Yes.
In referring to the abolition of the traditional Hawaiian faith, are you referring to the destruction of the traditional temples?
It was part of the result of the abolition of the abolishment of the religious order.
When you say abolishment of the religious order, what are you referring to as the religious order?
Well, in just through reading the whole process of the abolishment of the religious order took place in an act called Ainoa, free eating, and this is where the rules that govern daily living was set aside. So in Ainoa, females were disallowed from eating certain religious foods and from participating in eating with men. In the Ainoa event, women freely ate with the men, and then an order was given that the idols be taken down. In some instances they were burned. In some instances they were hidden.
The last word you used was hidden?
Hidden. Yes.
Is it true that there was a great deal of conflict that erupted at that particular time over the abolition of the attempt to abolish the traditional faith?
There were two documented protests.
One happened in Hamakua, where emissaries from the king, I believe, the emissary and two of his followers were succumbed to death as part of the, I believe, the part of the protest action. And then when King Kamehameha died, he gave the stewardship of the government to his son Liholiho, and he gave the stewardship of the war god Ku to his nephew Kekua Okalani. And dispute was led between the faction that Kamehameha II belonged to and the faction that was led by Kekua Okalani. And what became of it was that there was a question whether they should deal with the revolution in Hamakua, and it was opinioned by Kalani Moku that no, that the bigger threat was Kekua Okalani. So they sent a party to Ka'awaloa in Kealakekua Bay to request Kekua Okalani's participation in a council to a council to discuss the actions of the abolishment of the kapu.
So are you equating the abolishment of the kapu with the abolishment of the faith?
It was the religious order that was put down. In fairness, one has to acknowledge that I don't believe that the abolishment extended to the worship of personal deities, because families had their own personal gods, as well as the keeping of the mythology. No one was prosecuted for their own personal beliefs, but public worship upon the heiaus was basically desisted.
So if I were to describe the traditional faith to you as having two components, one component is the temples, where the kahunas are the keepers of the faith, and the other component is what is practiced in the home, which I would call a religion, call that religion, call the other one faith. Would that be your understanding of the traditional Hawaiian faith?
Well, yes, I think I can agree with your interpretation.
So there were no congregations in the traditional Hawaiian faith like we see in a Christian church, for example?
Yeah, not until much later.
And those that had altars in their homes were not forced to have the altars taken out or anything of the sort?
I cannot answer that question, but I do understand that the personal gods were hidden from public view, so they were put away in caves or holes.
You state that the Hawaiians took the rock from the quarry off the mountain with the full consent and in the presence of the gods. You remember that statement in your...
Yes, I do.
How did that consent manifest itself?
Well, I'm not exactly sure, either through some kind of religious process or ritual, but understand me, that the daily habits, the daily life of the of Hawaiian was strictly governed by religious process. You couldn't separate your daily living from religious process.
You're talking about in the traditional times?
Yeah, I'm talking about before 1819.
Okay, and so that the religion was seamless with the society. It was all one.
Yes.
Yeah. You mentioned Makahiki, and you said that Makahiki was a time when there was a procession of the ali'i around the island to collect taxes.
Yes.
Are you aware that Makahiki is the season of the god Lono?
Yes, I am.
And were the Makahiki processions led by the priests of Lono?
I'm not sure if they were led by the priest of Lono.
If I were to say that Makahiki is still celebrated today, would you agree?
Yes, I do.
If I were to say that when the priests of Lono circulated around the island at the time of Makahiki, there were athletic contests held in each area they visited, could you agree to that?
I'm not sure if each of the areas held athletic competitions. It may have been regional, where they brought contestants to a specific area.
But it was sort of a Hawaiian Olympics kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if I were to say to you that when the priests of Lono circulated around the island, that people brought them offerings of fruits and vegetables and other foodstuffs, would you agree?
Yes, they brought all kinds of tribute.
And if I were to say to you that the priests were evaluating the physical conditions of the people as shown in their athletic performance, would you agree?
I think that's a true statement.
And if I were to say to you that the Lono priests examined the offerings that were brought to evaluate the quality of the items being grown, would you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
So, in your understanding of the traditional Hawaiian faith, is Lono the god of the earth?
I believe is God of agriculture.
And is Ku the god of the ocean?
I don't believe so. I believe he's, and again, I'm not, Ku has many forms. I know he's recognized as a war god, but he isn't particularly, he's got many different forms.
And would Mauna Kea be the highest manifestation of Lono?
I cannot answer that question. I don't have a.
Well, if Lono is the god of the earth, and this is the highest mountain on earth.
Oh, I didn't say he was the god of the earth. I said he was the god of agriculture.
Oh, so you don't consider Lono as the god of the earth?
No.
Okay. Did those involved in quarrying the rock for the adze set up altars or otherwise acknowledge the sacredness of the quarry area?
Can you repeat that question,
Sure,
or can
sure.
you reread the question?
Did those involved in quarrying the rock to make the adze set up altars in the area where they were gathering the stones?
This is an assumption because those altars are located around the adze quarry. So I would assume that the practitioners of stone gathering set up those altars.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Sinkin.
Thank you, Mr. Sinkin.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Kanaele.
Aloha. Aloha, Chad.
Aloha.
How you doing? Good, good. Okay, since Kealoha and Pua asked most of my questions, I would like to just a few questions, okay? Was there an abolishment of the Kanaka language in Hula?
Kanaka.
Language in Hula?
not in 1819, but there was an abolishment of language and hula.
This was later on.
I think the hula was after the missionaries arrived, and language was by the Republic of Hawaii.
Oh, I see. Oh,
Yeah.
thanks. I don't know that part. So there's a big gap between those two, language and hula.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Do you believe that because of the Christian teaching, and finally kind of spiritually conquered the Kanaka,
Yeah.
so would you say that that's part of the reason why you kind of lost the hula first and then the language later as time went on?
I'm not exactly sure. I don't know how long a lapse there was, but conversion to Christianity was a very, very slow process.
What does Manuahi mean? Manuahi, M-A-N-U-A-H-I.
I'm most familiar with the term as being free.
In the Western sense, there's no free, right? In the Western sense, I mean, in the teachings that you have got from baby time to now, in the Western sense, there's no free. Give you something and you don't own nothing.
Well, I believe the word free is used in a Western sense. I'm not exactly sure what.
It's kind of different from Manuahi, though.
Yeah, I mean, free is like not charging, like,
Yeah.
give somebody kalo, you just give them kalo.
That would
take
be
care of
what,
his family.
Manuahi.
Yeah, it would just be interpreted as, you just wouldn't have an expectation of exchanging money in terms of a system of valuation.
Okay. I was going to ask you an expert on Makaki or not, so okay. You never read that CDUA, right? Did you see
No,
it?
I never read the CDUA.
You've never read the FYES, right?
No, I've never read it.
Why read the fine print on the contract?
What's that?
Why read the fine print on the
I
contracts?
just don't have a desire to read legal. I was never interested in reading it.
Yeah, me too, but this brought us to that point, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm going to ask you what I want to ask Hayes guys. Did Kalakaua put an observatory on Mauna Kea?
No.
Okay. Did Kalakaua put one on Mount Kaala?
No.
Do you know where he put his telescope?
I believe in Punahou School, and I know it ultimately ended up in Kaimuki.
Yeah, more down on the Vals. Kanaka, right?
Yeah.
You know why he now put them on the secret areas?
Put them where?
On the secret areas? I mean, the top. In your reading, do you know that every top of all mountains in Polynesia is sacred?
Yes.
Okay, just check it.
But do I need to answer that second part of the question?
But just check it.
Do I know why?
Oh, yeah.
Because I didn't answer it.
I thought you did.
Probably because it was hard to get to.
You think that's the only reason?
Yeah, I believe so.
Kalakaua?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh. Were you there around that timing?
Excuse me.
Were you in that timing?
What was
where
it?
you could make that statement? In Kalakaua,
1870s.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't born
Thank you.
then.
You probably read about that or something.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you know that he not only reinstated the hula, he instituted the Hawaiian religion within the kingdom by making a board of health of kahunas?
I'm sorry. I didn't.
Yeah, I'll say it aloud. Slowly.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you know that the Hawaiian kingdom, under King Kalakaua, took the freedom of, wait, no, that's the wrong one, instituted the Hawaiian religion within the kingdom by making the Board of Health run by kahuna?
No, I did not know that.
Okay. Did you know that the Hawaiian Kingdom under King Kalakaua took the freedom of religion back to Kamehameha IV and V when there was freedom of religion? Okay, let's do it again. Did you know that the Hawaiian Kingdom under King Kalakaua took the freedom of religion back to Kamehameha IV and V when there was freedom of religion?
No, I was not aware.
Okay. You know, he did that, so now, did you know that he did that because we practice our own religion instead of foreign desert religion?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Practice what?
So now we could practice our own religion instead of a foreign religion.
Is there a question?
Yeah. Did you know? Because of that, we could now practice our own religion instead of a foreign religion?
No, I did not know.
Okay. In your travel, would you agree that natives of the place you visited are going through the similar experiences with their occupational governments and their native apologists for their sacred areas? You got that? No?
Yeah, I think I understand the question. I don't have an answer to that.
Okay. Do you have religious affiliations? Do you have religious affiliations?
I was born and baptized a Catholic.
Okay.
My great-great-great-grandfather was the first Hawaiian minister in a Waianae church in Lahaina.
Oh. Did you know it, see, what was here? During Kahumanu's time, that she approached Boki to harass the Catholics because they were idol worshippers?
I'm not sure that about that event in history.
Oh, yeah. Next time we'll bring an exhibit.
Yeah, I did understand that there was conflict though.
Okay. You know why they had conflict?
No, I don't.
Okay. But you just knew, yeah?
I've heard.
Just that they had conflicts or not why, right?
I just heard that there was conflict.
Okay. So I'm glad I told you something you never know too.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Do you believe that the Kanaka of Polynesia believes that they and the Aina are one?
I've heard that there is association that they belong, they're part of the land that they live on, but they're also part of the other parts of the environment that the islands come from.
So you know what Aloha Aina means?
Love of land.
Okay. Or not love of the living God too?
What's that?
Love of the living God too?
Love of a living God. No, I know it as being love of land.
Okay. You know the Hawaiians consider Aina as a living God? Yes or no?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Got me confused there a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you subscribe to the assertions that the Kanaka is a lost tribe of Israel?
No, I do not.
Okay.
The lost tribe of
Israel.
Israel.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's part of the foreign religions coming in, trying to make base with us here. That,
I just wanted to know what the word was. I didn't hear it.
okay,
Sorry.
Thank you. Do you know that Polynesians have their own DNA?
Oh, absolutely.
Right, yeah. Do you know that Hebrews have their own DNA? Hebrews.
I assume so.
Yeah, me too. I didn't know that part. Okay. Okay, I'm going to change my line of questions. Do you recognize that each pu'u up there on Mauna Kea represents the body forms of our gods and goddesses?
Yes.
Prior to 1819.
Well, prior to 1819, I still believe that practitioners of today do recognize that the Kino law form takes its shape in the various pu'u.
Okay, thank you. Do you recognize that all these pu'u, that when put together on top, all the way to the side, it makes the body form of Poliahu? That we can see from Hilo?
No, I'm not familiar with that. I do understand. I didn't know that a whole series of pu'u makes the body form of Poliahu.
Oh.
No.
Have you seen that body form at all?
I've seen the pu'u. I've never thought in that line of thinking, that perspective of seeing the multiple pu'u as being the body form of Poliahu.
Were you born and raised?
I was born in on Oahu. I was raised in Lahaina.
Oh, no, I know. I thank you. Do you know that when they desecrated that pu'u that represents the breast of Poliahu, that there was a jump in breast cancer?
Nope.
Okay. Do you know when Kauhalawa was being born, that there was a jump in, what do you call that? When you kill the baby?
Or infanticide, genocide.
No, the other one when you
Oh,
go to the
abortion.
doctor, abortion. You know, there was a jump in abortions.
Excuse me. Can you just repeat the whole?
Okay. When Kahulabi, you know, we know to look at it as a fetus. You know, when they started bombing the place and destroying our sacred area, there was a jump in abortions.
No, I did not. No.
I'm going to jump to another one. RUCH, was there not a major funder for the education of telescopes for the Outriggers and TMT?
I'm not familiar with, but they were major funders for.
When you worked for them, what did you do for them?
I was a navigator in residence at the Imilo Astronomy Center as well as associate director.
He wasn't involved in their day-to-day things.
RCUH.
Yeah.
No, that's. I don't know. It's like the managing entity, and then we work in various departments. So.
Do you know David Lovell?
Yes, he was. I believe he was the director of the RCUH office in Hilo.
Yeah. Did he help you get any funding for a VA'a?
No.
Did you get a funding for VA'a?
Not through RCUH.
Through?
Through the Native Hawaiian Education Act. It was the grant was written by the Aha Punana Leo.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
Did you know that Heva recanted his position on Christianity on his deathbed?
No, I did not.
Okay. Do you recognize the saying, Akua Sabe?
I'm not.
Akua Sabe. Have you heard that? Sabe, S-A-B-E?
No.
Okay. Do you recognize that it takes a long time for brainwashing to be neutralized? Do you recognize that it takes a long time for brainwashing to be neutralized?
No.
Okay. Do you recognize that locals and Native Hawaiians are being used for assimilation of ideas of monetary gains? For ideas of monetary gains?
No.
Or for delaying of the truth of the illegal taking of Hawaii?
No.
Okay. Do you know what Ai'a means?
No.
Do you know that the type of reasoning, do you know what type of reasoning got us more telescopes than was allowed?
No.
Do you know it takes time, contested case hearings, court cases, and observation of non-protecting by agencies designed for the protection of sacred sites to them before the Hawaiians and allies start protecting their resources? Did I get it right?
Can you? The question was rather long, so if
Yeah,
I can,
can you
have
read
her
it back to you?
repeat the question.
Must be my tone of voice, kind of hard for you.
You know, it takes time, contested case hearing, court cases, and observation of non-protection by agencies to be designed for protection of sacred sites for them and for the Hawaiians and allies protecting their resources.
Sorry, I'm not. The question is too
Too long.
for me. Sorry.
Okay,
Apologize.
Okay. You know, contested case hearings, court cases, and observation of the guy's not protecting our shit. Yeah? Okay. But the agency is designed to protect it. and they never protect them. How long? Wait. Oh, because they're not protecting, how long before the Hawaiians and their allies going to start to protect their sacred areas? Yes or no? You can tell no.
Oh, it's not a yes or no question because you're asking for how
Maybe.
long. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, how long? And I
But you know how long? No. Eh?
no, I don't.
Okay, so
Yeah, so yeah, no,
Say yes or no.
in that I don't know how long.
You know, you was talking about hidden gods,
Excuse me.
about how the Hawaiians would hide the gods, their own personal gods. Most of these personal gods, would you say that they were related or had attributes to the main four gods and goddesses?
No, I don't know.
Okay. So again, most of your learning is got from reading.
I'm sorry.
Most of your learning is mostly from reading and of the practice of your people's sacred rites and teachings.
No, I have personal experience in religious idols.
Does your Christian upbringing have a little, well, wouldn't be, you Catholic, okay. So, let's see, I think I'm almost there. Yeah. So again, mahalo for your time and energy. Aloha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kanaele. Ms. Kakalia?
Tiffany Kakalia, for the record. And just for the record, Judge Amano, to state that I'll be able to cross-examine Mr. Hayes on next round.
I'm going to catch that at 4 o'clock, but
Okay.
yes, don't worry. I
Okay.
wrote it down.
Mahalo nui. Aloha Kalepa.
Aloha,
mai.
Tiffany.
I just have a few questions. In Mr. Kayama's cross-examination, you were asked if you read the EIS for the TMT project, and you stated no. Is this correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Is this document familiar to you at all?
The EIS? No, it's not familiar with me.
Have you served on the Cultural Advisory Council Kahuku Mauna?
Yes, I have.
What were your years of service?
You know, I'm not exactly sure when I started, but I know my term ended in 2014 around March.
How many of those years that you were on the council were in the chair position?
I would, it was when Ed Stevens stepped off, so I believe maybe 2 years.
2 years.
But again, I'm not sure about the exact dates.
Okay. During your time of service, were you asked to review the EIS for the TMT project?
I don't believe so. Yeah.
So you wouldn't have been in that hui that made a recommendation to support it for the...
I was a member of that board, but it was just a deliberation on what the recommendation would be. I didn't agree with the recommendation. I wanted some of the language to be changed.
Mahalo. Another question that Mr. Kayama asked was if you at any time spoke with practitioners of the Mauna. You answered never. Is this correct?
Excuse me, can you repeat the question?
Mr. Kayama asked if you had spoke to any of the practitioners on the Mauna, on Mauna Kea,
About TMT.
about TMT or about your engagement.
No, I've never spoken with
And you
any of
never
the
spoke?
practitioners about TMT.
Okay. Are you familiar with the Mauna Kea Comprehensive Management Plan of 2009?
Somewhat familiar.
Are you familiar with the subplan for the cultural resource management?
I've never read it in detail.
So you wouldn't be aware that the first action item for Kahuku Mauna to address cultural resource management is to work with families of lineal and historical connections to the Mauna, cultural practitioners, and the Office of Hawaiian Affairs in the development of appropriate procedures and protocols regarding cultural practice.
I believe that if you're saying that that item is from the Cultural Resources Plan, that we did have an effort to work with lineal descendants of Mauna Kea.
Were there actually conversations with anyone?
Yes, there was.
Can you tell me who they were?
Well, it was, I believe it was in committee, but the one person, and this was a process where I think they advertised for lineal descendants, and the only person that I recall as stepping up with proof of lineal descendancy was the Lindsay family, and in particular, Larry Kawanoi Kimura.
Outside of lineal descendants, because there is several other resources listed, do you recall any other attempts made to connect with this population of Hawaiians?
It's been a long time since I sat on the board. I'm not exactly sure if there was a list of, outside of lineal descendants, if there was a list of cultural descendants. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I do remember discussing that, though.
Okay. On page 3 of your testimony, in paragraph 1, you state that it is culturally consistent to advocate for Hawaiian participation in a field of science that continues to enable tradition and a field of work we ought to lead. Is this true?
Excuse me, what part of the paragraph?
First paragraph. Well, it's in the first paragraph on page 3.
Okay. Yeah. It is culturally consistent to advocate for Hawaiian participation in a field of science that continues to enable that tradition and a field of work in which we ought to lead.
Yes, thank you. And just for clarification, you served on the Kahukumana Council for at least one term. That would be 4 years.
Yes, I believe so.
So if you went off on 2014 in March, it would have been approximately 2010 that you would have been on the council, approximately.
At least, and I'm not sure, it may have been earlier.
Okay. Mahalo nui, Kalepa.
Right.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you, Ms. Kakalia. Mr. Vicente?
Dwight Vicente. Good afternoon, Mr. Baybayan. You stated earlier that there were bombs in Kaho'olawe. Who was that?
That was I believe it was the U.S. military. It may have been the Navy, I believe, was the principal agent of that. It may have been other service branches, however.
Do you know how long the U.S. Navy has been in this kingdom?
The United States Navy in this kingdom. I'm not sure.
Are you aware that there's a treaty with the United States through King Kalakaua?
No, I'm not.
Do you know that in 1887 there was an amendment to the 1875 treaty to station the Navy at Pearl River?
No, I'm not.
Are you aware that the treaty was only for refueling?
No, I'm not familiar.
Are you familiar that to extend that treaty beyond the expiration date, which is 1894?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear the first word this way.
Are you familiar that to extend that treaty beyond the expiration date, which is 1894? You can't hear it? Are you familiar that to extend that treaty beyond the expiration date, which is 1894?
I'm not familiar with the treaty.
Is the U.S. Navy still here?
Yes, they are.
Is there a valid treaty?
I have no idea.
Did the United States in 1898 continue that treaty by joint resolution under Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2 of the U.S. Constitution?
I'm not certain.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Vicente. Mr. Kealoha?
Aloha. Aloha, Mr. Baybayan.
Aloha, Mr. Kealoha.
Kamahana Kealoha here. I don't think we've ever met outside
I don't
of
believe
this.
so.
It's very nice to meet you.
Same here.
Do you remember when the Hokulea went down to Rarotonga? Sorry, I will try. Do you remember when the Hokulea went down to Rarotonga for the Pacific Arts Festival? Yeah, they're indigenous words, and let me slow down. I'm sorry. I don't even know if that's the right term for my words. They're indigenous, but they're Kanaka. I will slow down. Do you recall the trip Hokulea took to Rarotonga in the Cook Islands for the Pacific Arts Festival?
Yes, I was part of the crew, but I wasn't part of the crew that ended up in Rarotonga. I got off at an island before Rarotonga. It was called Mauke, and I got off purposely to evaluate. They had built a voyaging canoe that they're going to sail to Rarotonga as part of the Pacific Arts Festival. So I was, I never volunteered, but I was volunteered.
Okay. I just wanted to disclose any chance we might have met, but that would have been the only time. So I wanted to just be clear about that. And it's nice to meet you now. So aloha. You, or the Hokulea, comes under an entity, the Polynesian Voyaging Society, is that right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And I just kind of want to go over your perspective on that. The word Polynesia, yeah? What does that mean to you?
You know, I'm in my professional life, I don't like to use the term of Polynesia, yeah, or Micronesia or Melanesia, because it doesn't speak to the homogeneous people relationships of people. I prefer to use the term near Oceania and remote Oceania to describe the placement of the islands.
And what was the reason again you just said?
Because it you know, when you say Polynesia, many islands, Micronesia, small islands, Melanesia, black islands, we're a lot more homogeneous than those terms describe. And
you gave us, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but maybe I'm not being clear, and I'm sorry we're in this situation where I have to do that. I would never do that in our cultural norms.
Yeah.
So I apologize. But you said the reason why you try to use those other terms is because why?
Because those terms, if you call all the islands in the Pacific Oceania, then you, in your rationale, you believe that all those islands are related to each other.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wanted, is your reason. Mahalo. I'll move on from the questioning. It tells me the perspective from which you come from. Do you know of other reasons people might not use those terms?
I'm not sure. I don't know of any other reasons.
Do you know where they come from, where Polynesia, the term comes from?
Yeah, excuse me. It came from some French explorer a long time ago, and just kind of adopted those.
And you've never heard the concern about a culture coming to dominate another culture and then renaming things, and maybe that might be a reason for not using the word Polynesian?
That's not my reason, though.
No, I know, but I'm just asking that, and I That's very interesting, is what I said. And I'm trying to view what kind of perspective you might be coming from with your written direct testimony. So I'm sorry. I hope I'm going in the right way for the process. I'll keep moving. But so you are aware that others might have that as a reason?
Yes.
Okay, and you choose not to, that's not your reason, clearly?
That's not my reason.
Mahalo. Do you receive your instructor's salary while you are sailing on the boat?
Yes, I'm paid by the university.
While you're sailing, though, you get paid?
Yes, I'm actually the liaison for the university to the Malama Honua Worldwide Voyage Project.
Is that the same position that you described as a representative, your representative for UH? Because earlier when somebody asked something, I thought I heard you say that you work as a representative of UH. Is that the terminology?
Yeah, I am a representative of the university to the Worldwide Voyage Project.
And that's the formal label and job title?
There wasn't really a title assigned me.
Wait, what are the job descriptions for this job with no title?
That would be...
I'm sorry, it's university funds, that's why I like to know.
Just a minute, we need to let him answer the question.
I wasn't trying to stop, I'm sorry.
There was no job title, no job description for this assignment. There was, however, a request with specific duties that was put to the university.
What did you have to do for this job as work, your duties?
As the duties that I'm performing now.
Which are?
I serve as captain and principal navigator and administrator for the Worldwide Voyage. I am responsible for whatever leg I sail on, or I'm tasked to administer. I serve as the principal site director for that portion of the voyage.
Mahalo. Wait 1 second. And Malama Honua, is that the name of the entity or the project?
The project.
Who is the main funder for the project to exist, Malama Honua?
There are many corporate sponsors, so we don't have a primary source of funding.
Does the university fund Malama Honua?
No, only in that they allow me the time away from the university.
So while you're getting paid by the university, part of that duty are to be with Malama Honua?
Yes, me as well as others from the university participate.
Okay. So you would say they are affiliated with the University of Hawaii, Malama Honua?
Yes, there's a number of institutions that are affiliated with Malama Honua Department.
But I'm talking about the university.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have you ever navigated solely using traditional practices and technologies?
Yes.
On any, I'm not done. And I gotta be like this, but because I run over time and I sidetrack, and it's not you, and I don't mean to be rude. I'm learning the process here. So have you ever navigated solely using traditional practices and technologies on any leg of the Malama Honua project, the specific Malama Honua project?
Yes, I have, and I'm just trying to focus on the technology part. Traditional practices, yes, but technology as well.
Traditional practices and traditional technologies.
Oh, traditional technologies.
As in Captain Cook being discovered lost in Hawaii.
Okay, yes.
You have?
Yes, I have.
So on this leg, where was it? Can you describe where it was, how long it was, and just there, start there, please.
I helped out with the navigation process from Hawaii to Tahiti to the Cook Islands and Samoa.
Mahalo. And you're telling me there was no safety boat following you, no cameras, no contact with the rest of the world?
No, we just had a second canoe.
What's the second canoe?
Hiki Analia.
And on this second canoe, did they use any modern day technologies?
Yes, they did.
So you had, the question I asked was whether you had access. I should have asked, did you have access to any Western tools on any leg for the Malama Honua
Yes,
project?
we did.
You presented to me, because I thought I'd ask you that, just give me a second, okay, sorry. I thought I had asked you whether or not on the Malama Honua project you have used Western technologies, and you confirmed yes, you did. Am I right? Sorry, I'm pro se, so.
I don't recall a question, but yes, we did, so.
And I want you to describe, please, sir, the incidents or the times and legs you have engaged in where you did not use any type of modern day technology. And you said yes, and you described this to me, and then you told me that, but there was a second boat. Is that right?
Yes.
So the boat was for?
Excuse me?
What was the boat for?
The boat was there to provide safety for the voyage.
Like first aid?
No.
Like?
Just to have an accompanying vessel, just for in case, well, let's say somebody fell overboard. Yeah. Hokulea is very, it's because it's only a sail-powered vessel. It has no auxiliary power, no engines on board. You would need a vessel with auxiliary power to rescue.
Mahalo. I'm just trying to get back to my reasoning. Is that boat required to be with you? Or is it a choice? Can you work with the funders you do? All the funders you do, all the people that fund Malama Honua, can you work with all those people? Will they give you money if you did not have that second boat there? You watching somebody?
We've sailed without an escort vessel, so.
While being funded as Malama Honua by all the funders.
I would assume so, because we've sailed without an escort vessel.
Did you have to sign a liability form? Or is there insurance? Do they have to get insurance to cover as a corporation for you? The lives on the boats?
I'm not sure about the insurance.
You would be sure, I think, because they would ask you to sign a liability.
Mr. Kealoha, excuse me, but you really have to let the witness
Oh,
answer.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to. Thank you.
Yeah, because I'm getting half answers and I'm not sure what I'm hearing.
Because I'm realizing I'm not answering the right question and I'm trying to correct myself.
Yes,
So I'm sorry.
I understand.
And I'll stop doing that. So where were we?
Waiver.
Did you ever sign, I'm sorry.
Waiver.
Yeah, did you ever sign a liability waiver for
No.
any of these trips?
No.
Are the lives on the boat required to have insurance of some kind?
I believe so.
Is the boat part of that insurance clause that might exist that for the reason why they got, okay, wait. Why do they have insurance?
Well, like collision insurance, right? That's to the structure. So if if the vessel collides with some object, then you would need to assess the amount of damage, and then the insurance would come in.
And it's required that you sign it. You cannot participate in Malama Honua if you don't sign it.
No, it's collision insurance. It's not liability insurance.
Okay, I see. Yeah. Who enforces this insurance or supplies it or who pays for it? Whose insurance?
The paying agency, would be the insured. The insured organization, so would be the Polynesian Voyaging Society, would pay for the insurance.
So do they approve of trip plans? Like if you chose not to use any Western instruments, if you get right there, if you choose not to use any Western instruments, who is it still possible, and no second boat and all, to do those legs of voyages under Malama Honua?
Yes, it is.
Why haven't you guys done that?
Why haven't we done what?
Without a second boat and without any instruments, navigate.
Because when we got to New Zealand, it became very, very problematic for managing the cost, number one, and for needing to we needed a second canoe back in Hawaii to continue with the mission of Malama Honua.
Did it cost our ancestors the same things you're describing? Did they need funding for that? I don't understand. I'm just trying to understand why we haven't, or you haven't, or the groups haven't traveled traditionally without an escort boat and without that kind of technology to access.
I'm not sure. Can you repeat the question, please?
Can you please read the question back? I'm sorry.
Did it cost our ancestors the same things you're describing? Do they need funding for that? I don't understand. I still don't understand why you haven't, or the group hasn't traveled traditionally without escort boat and without
Okay,
that kind of technology to access.
Mahalo. Does that make it clearer? It's at the beginning of the question.
If you can just maybe shorten the question.
You said that these are the reasons why you guys haven't engaged in that kind of travel with solely traditional technology. You said because of costs and because it became problematic.
No, I think that was in reference to Hiki on Alia.
Okay, let's start all over then. I feel like I thought I asked the question right twice, but I'll try again.
Excuse me. Your Honor, can I have a brief recess?
Yes.
I gotta go.
Yeah, let's take a 10-minute recess, please.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you. So, do you have knowledge that the University of Hawaii is the sublease owner on the summit? That they lease this land to the TMT. Do you know that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're the leaseholder and
Yeah.
they sublease it. Yeah.
Well, the DLNR subleases it to them, or I don't know, I'm not going to try to describe that, never mind. But thank you. But you understand that they're the leaseholder.
There's a process, yeah.
But you understand that they're the title for that lease.
Yes.
They're your employer.
Yes, that's correct.
They're the entity supporting the bid for a permit here at the Conservation District use. That's why we're here, right? That's 3.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to establish that, and I think really that's all I can do today, and I don't want to bear you any more pain. Mahalo.
Thank you.
Mahalo. Kealoha.
Ms. Freitas?
Aloha, Cindy Freitas. Aloha, Chad.
Hey, hello, Cindy.
Isn't it true that our ancestors would have complete understanding of their environment?
They would, through their daily living, have a very broad awareness about their environment.
Thank you. On page 3 of your testimony, the top sentence, legacy of people who left the safety of the coastline sailed away in so doing discovery of the stars. Would it be fair to say that the legacy of the people who understand their environment will plan to discover the ocean and stars?
Could you repeat the statement here?
Would it be fair to say that the legacy of the people, which you have stated, who understand their environment, then would plan to discover ocean and stars before leaving the coastline?
Yes, I believe that because you're referencing that their understanding of their environment happened on land. That's correct.
Yes. Thank you. So let me get an understanding. Before you and your crew go out on any voyage, isn't it true you guys plan and prepare?
Oh, yes. We go through a lengthy planning and preparation process.
Okay, thank you. Isn't it fair to say, although the Li'i has abolished the gods and goddesses, as that some of the Native Hawaiian people went underground with their religious practices?
I believe that's a very fair and justified statement.
Thank you. Isn't it true the celestial portal into the universe exists today?
If you're referring to the celestial portal as being astronomy, then well, even if it's a cultural perspective of astronomy, then yes.
On top of Mauna Kea, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't it true that this celestial portals are by the culture, traditional religious practices as well? Isn't it true that this celestial portal are used by the culture, traditional religious practices as well?
I'm not certain about the cultural traditional practices.
Thank you. Page 2, top sentence of your testimony. When you refer to my ancestor, who are you referring to?
Can you
Top
point me to
page 2, that illustrate my ancestors?
to illustrate my ancestors' wisdom to adapt and use their knowledge and resources to survive. So anyone that's related to me or anyone that precedes our generation.
When you say precedes in your generation, those family, your lineage, were they also in the culture, traditional, customary religious practice as well?
Can you just repeat the question, please?
When you say your ancestors is your lineage, those lineage in the past, are they connected to the culture, traditional practice, religious practices as well?
Yes, my lineage goes back to Umialiloa, so yeah.
Thank you. The word aloha means love of the land. What is your interpretation of that?
Pardon me, just a minute. Did you say aloha or aloha aina?
Aloha.
Oh, pardon me. Thank you.
For the general public and mostly people that are not steeped in the understanding of Hawaiian language, it would mean welcome or goodbye. But to me, it's got a deeper meaning. I'm linguistically wrong, and I can't be corrected on this, but I believe that it comes from the compound words alo and ha. Alo being the space that separates you and individual. So when you hui alo, you meet face to face. And in that exchange of meeting alo is the exchange of breath, which is the most sacred essence of the human species. So I literally take it to mean to stand in our presence and exchange that which is special to each one of us, our breath.
Thank you. So you mentioned the ha, to exchange.
Yeah.
Would you say that would be part of the culture, traditional religious practices as well?
Well, I believe it's part of the culture. I'm not sure if it's part of the religious practice.
Thank you. Your lineage, when you talked about Umi Aleloa, does that mean that's the A'apua'a of the Hamakokos?
He was raised in Waipio Valley, so that would include that. But he later became reigning, I'm not sure if it's reigning Ali or reigning Mo'i of the island, so that would extend his stewardship to a much larger, it would extend his stewardship to all the lands that fell under his leadership.
Do you think it's fair that Umi Aleloa regard Anakea as a sacred area?
I cannot speak for. I don't know. Sorry, I don't have an answer to that.
Your lineage, Umi Aleloa, was a very wise person and also followed a kapu system. Is
Yep.
that correct?
Yes, he did.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Ms. Freitas. Pardon me, but Ms. Freitas, did Mr. Freitas leave or?
He left. You want me to proxy for him?
Sure. All right, so shall we just indicate he's not present? All right. Any redirect examination, Mr. Knott?
No further redirect, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Baybayan, thank you very much for your patience and waiting all these days for our opportunity to have you testify.
Malanui kako.
The university's next witness.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. At this time, we would like to call Dr. Robert McClaren to the stand.
And your offer of proof, please.
Dr. McClaren will testify about decommissioning of the telescopes on Mauna Kea. Specifically, he will testify as to the procedures outlined in the decommissioning plan that was previously approved by the Board of Land and Natural Resources in the University of Hawaii. Dr. McClaren will also testify regarding the university's current status of telescope decommissioning.
So his area is decommissioning.
His area is decommissioning.
All right, thank you very much.
It is a housekeeping matter. In his direct testimony, there is a reference to an exhibit with his CV, which is not included in our exhibits. We have distributed a copy of his CV previously when Mr. Kayama was nice enough to point it out, and we will introduce it now as our exhibit A127.
Thank you. And will you further arrange to make a copy electronically as well as hard copy available to Mr. Kane?
Yeah, I believe that has been done.
Okay. The reason is we want to upload it so everyone has electronic access as well. So, and you provided copies, hard copies for everybody. I think I saw you doing it about an hour or so ago.
That is correct.
All right. Thank you. Sir, could you state your name, please?
Yes, Robert McClaren.
And sir, could you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear and affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the matters before this tribunal shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And Dr. McClaren, do you have your direct testimony in front of you?
Yes, I do.
And how many pages is that, please?
I believe it is. Okay. It's 4 pages plus the signature page.
And is the signature page page 5?
Yes.
And is that your signature?
Yes, it is.
And by signing that document, are you attesting that the statement is true and correct?
Except for the clarification on the submission of the CV, which Mr. Sanderson just alluded to.
I see. So in the first paragraph, last sentence, you refer to your curriculum vitae as Exhibit A-119.
Yes, it's not that. I believe he said 127. Is that correct? It's just been submitted.
All right. So except for that, everything else is correct.
That's correct.
Okay. And you can have up to 10 minutes, please, to summarize your testimony.
Okay. So my name's Robert McClaren. I'm the Associate Director of the University of Hawaii Institute for Astronomy. Since joining the Institute in 1990, I've been closely involved with the development of astronomy facilities on Mauna Kea. Prior to that, I was on the staff of the Canada-France-Hawaii Telescope from 1982 until 1990. The proposed addition of the 30-meter telescope to the group of observatories on Mauna Kea would be accompanied by the removal of several existing facilities within the same time frame. My testimony focuses on this aspect, that is, the decommissioning of existing facilities and the associated limits on future development. The official document on this subject is the decommissioning plan for the Mauna Kea observatories. This is a subplan of the Mauna Kea Comprehensive Management Plan. And as such, it was approved by both the UH Board of Regents and the Board of Land and Natural Resources in 2009. Most of the decommissioning plan deals with the requirements and detailed process for decommissioning telescopes. Chapter 5 is slightly different in its content in that it addresses the university's goal of maintaining a world-leading center for astronomy research and education while limiting future growth. At the time the decommissioning plan was adopted, there were 13 telescopes operating on Mauna Kea. 2 were owned and operated exclusively by UH. The 2.2-meter telescope and Hoku-Kea, which is the UH Hilo Instructional Telescope. The other 11 were owned by non-UH organizations and situated on sublease sites. In May 2009, Caltech announced its intention to decommission one of those 11, namely the Caltech Submillimeter Observatory, and to remove it from the mountain by 2018. In September 2015, CSO ended scientific operations. And in November of that year, Caltech submitted its notice of intent to decommission. The notice of intent was accepted by the Mauna Kea Management Board in May of this year. When the decommissioning plan was adopted, it was assumed, for planning purposes, that the other 10 non-UH telescopes, that's all the ones except CSO, would continue to operate through the terms allowed under their subleases. Subleases end in 2033. This is based on the fact that relatively inexpensive upgrades could maintain their high level of scientific productivity. It was understood that policy changes at sponsor organizations could lead to earlier termination of operations and decommissioning, but no such policy decisions were anticipated at the time of the decommissioning plan. With regard to the UH-owned facilities, the assumption in the decommissioning plan was that UH would continue to use both Hoku-Kea and the 2.2-meter site through the term of the master lease, that is until 2033. The other basic decommissioning plan assumption was that the 30-meter telescope would be developed at the designated 13 North site. Based on the initial conditions and the assumptions I just mentioned, and in line with the goal of limiting future growth while maintaining scientific and educational excellence, the decommissioning plan projected that 10 facilities would continue beyond 23 on the assumption that the lease would be extended. Conversely, 4 would be decommissioned and removed by 2033. Those 4 being Caltech submillimeter observatory, which I've already mentioned, the Very Long Baseline Array Antenna, UCERT, and one or other of James Clerk Maxwell Telescope and the submillimeter array. Starting with 13, 1 would be added, TMT, and 4 would be removed, the ones I just mentioned, leaving 10. None of the 4 to be removed was selected because it would be obsolete. All could remain productive given adequate sponsor support. Rather, they were selected either because of sponsor policy decisions, such as in the case of CSO, or on the basis of a balancing judgment by the university between, on the one hand, the future scientific potential of the facility and its site, and on the other hand, the goal of limiting overall physical presence on the mountain. In May of 2015, UH responded to 2 directives from Governor Ige, which bear on this topic. The first was that the 30-meter telescope site is the last new area that will be used for a telescope project. Any other future development would be at an existing site. This commitment was reaffirmed in a November 2015 letter from UH President Klassner to DLNR Chair Suzanne Case, and I believe that's Exhibit A39, that letter. The other response to a directive was that UH committed to decommissioning 3 telescopes by the time 30-meter telescope is operational. One of these is CSO, of which I just said that the decommissioning process has already started. Another is UCERT, and the university has proposed that the third would be Hokukea. This completes my summary.
Thank you, Dr. McClaren. TIO?
No questions, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Ward?
Your Honor, and this is Kalani Flores representing the Flores case Ohana, requesting to do a cross out of order, and those before me will give their consent. Is that possible?
Of course. Can you tell me why, just so we have a reason for the record?
And reason for the record that I believe, due to the schedule, I'm unlikely to be here next week, and then if I pass my questions on to someone else, it'll probably take 2 to 3 times longer. So in the efficiency of moving this hearing along, I believe that I can more effectively present our cross questions in an effective manner, in a timely manner.
Okay, hold on and let me just confirm with everybody. So Ms. Ward, any objections?
I have no objections. I have a lot of questions, and I'm hoping Mr. Flores will ask a lot of them.
And Ms. Peixoto, any objections? Mr. Ching, any objections?
No objections.
No objections, Mr. Kayama?
No objections.
All right, and let me check my list now. Mr. Fergerstrom, any objections?
No objections.
Ms. Kihoy, any objections?
No objections.
Mr. Kanuha, any objections? Mr. Ashida, any objections?
No objections, Your Honor.
Ms. Slightholm, any objections?
No objections.
Mr. Sinkin, any objections?
No objections.
Mr. Kanaele, any objections?
No objections.
Ms. Kakalia, any objections?
She stepped out already.
Okay. Mr. Vicente, any objections?
No objection. No objection.
Mr. Kealoha, any objections? Ms. Freitas, any objections? And Mr. Freitas is not here. All right, thank you, Mr. Flores. Go ahead.
And thank you, Your Honor, and to other parties for allowing me to move out of order for this cross. Hello, Mr. McClaren.
Hello, Kalani.
First question, and who approached you? Oh, sorry, before I start. My name is Kalani Flores. Before I start. My name is Kalani Flores. I'm representing the Flores case Ohana. Who approached you to submit testimony for the contested case hearing?
This specific testimony that I delivered now,
Yes.
I was asked by the university through the attorneys to submit on this topic.
And when you refer to attorneys, which particular attorneys, and just to clarify that?
The one sitting at the table here.
Is that with Carl Smith
Yeah,
and
Carl
Ball,
Smith Ball,
LLC? Okay, thank you. When you-
Dr. McClaren, could you raise the microphone and hold it a little closer to yourself? I'm having difficulty hearing you. Go ahead, Mr.
Okay.
Flores.
And in 2011, in a contested case held at that time, did you also present testimony regarding that contested
I
case?
testified. My recollection is that I actually presented rebuttal testimony at that time and not initial direct.
And the same question applies to that. Who approached you to submit testimony at that time regarding that contested case hearing?
The same entity.
Okay, and when you're saying same entity, referring to Carl Smith and Ball attorneys. Okay, thank you. Regarding this written direct testimony that you have submitted for this contested case hearing, did anyone advise you to make any changes to your written direct testimony after you initially submitted it to UH legal counsel?
No.
Okay. What are your roles and responsibilities as Associate Director at the Institute for Astronomy at the University of Hawaii?
The variety of roles. I assist the director in discharging his duties, which means that when he is out of town, I serve as acting director. I have several specific responsibilities in connection with the observatory activities on Mauna Kea. That's my main area of effort. I mentioned in my direct testimony my role with the development of those facilities since 1990. I've worked on the infrastructure improvements on the mountain. I am the administrative supervisor of the Mauna Kea Observatory Support Services. The general manager reports to the director's office, and I am the contact person in that. I help arrange the annual Mauna Kea Observatory's users meetings. So those are things in connection with Mauna Kea. I have the unenviable task of signing office space at our facility in Manoa. I have sort of responsibility for some of the accounts that the Institute has with the UH Foundation. So I think that's a sort of a broad brush treatment of what I do.
And just to clarify, who is the director that you refer to?
The director is Dr. Hunter Hausinger.
Okay. So are you overseeing the decommissioning plan for Mauna Kea Science Reserve?
No.
Thank you. So why is that the focus of your testimony if you're not in charge of looking at the decommissioning plan?
Well, because as I mentioned, the decommissioning plan, most of the document deals with the process and the details, right? And that's not the focus of my testimony, but I felt the exhibit needed to be presented because that's where this Chapter 5 is contained, so that you would have it. Okay, Chapter 5, yeah. So that's okay. Maybe that's good enough answer.
Thank you. Yeah. So I mean, so of all the topics and going back to your roles and responsibilities as Associate Director at the Institute for Astronomy at the University of Hawaii, in which decommissioning per se does not come under your purview as you described. So why, of all the things you could have presented testimony on, why was decommissioning plan selected?
Well, I didn't choose it.
Okay,
I was asked to do that. I can explain.
Okay, I'll stop you there. I'd like a follow-up question to that. So who asked you to address your written direct testimony regarding the decommissioning plan?
Carl Smith Ball.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue on with the next question.
Okay.
What has been your role as it pertains to the TMT project?
My role with the TMT project started with the site testing campaign that lasted about 3 years. I worked with the engineers and to develop the equipment and the plan for doing that site testing. So that was my initial involvement. I was involved in some of the work on the Conservation District use application. It wasn't a big effort on my part, but the things that pertain to my area of expertise, the astronomy aspect, the astronomy facilities and so on, I contributed to that.
Okay, sorry, was there anything else to add to that as far as your involvement with the TMT project?
Beg pardon?
I'm sorry if I may have cut you off, but did you have an additional part to that question to answer?
No, I think those are the main things. I've been involved since the beginning, starting.
So in reference to the CDA, what sections of the CDA were you involved in working on?
The description of the facility, because I'd worked on that description in previous CDUAs, I knew the kind of things that we needed to have there and that people would want to see, and so I gave advice on description of like the enclosure and the infrastructure and so on.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to go back to your previous part of your answer. You said you're involved with the site testing campaign. Could you please provide us more details to what extent was the site testing campaign involving?
Not sure I understand the question. Do you want me to describe the purpose of the site testing campaign?
So let me strike that question and let me re-ask the question. What was the site testing campaign as it pertains to the TMT project?
Well, to begin with, the TMT project assessed a number of sites all around the world for the location of the TMT, and they put essentially identical testing equipment at each of those locations, and one of those locations was on Mauna Kea, and after some discussion, it was decided that the site to be tested was 13 North. The site testing equipment measured such things as wind speed, atmospheric turbulence, dust, those kind of things. So that equipment was placed at 13 North. It was it reported remotely. Okay, did not have to have any personnel there, and it was left there for approximately 3 years.
Do you know what years that project was set up there?
I'm pretty sure it was 2005 to 2008. I'm pretty sure within a year of that.
Was there, was there a conservation district use permit issued for that?
There was a departmental permit, yes.
What do you mean by a departmental permit?
Well, there are several classes of permits in the conservation rules. Okay. Basically, there's 3 that you might call a permit. There's a site plan approval, departmental permit, and a board permit. And based on the rules, the department determined that a departmental permit was the appropriate permit for that activity.
And in that particular site at 13 North on the Northern Plateau, what was exactly erected there for this site testing?
There was a tower, a 3-legged tower that was erected about 20 feet high, if I recall correctly. It had an removable plastic enclosure on top, which at least folded away, and underneath the enclosure was a small telescope that was used to measure the atmospheric turbulence. There were also a small weather station for the meteorological parameters nearby, and there was a panel of solar panel to provide the electricity and a stack of batteries.
Was there any ground disturbance activities as a result of setting up that site testing at that time?
Effectively, no. And that was something that we planned in the planning stage, because at the other locations, TMT actually poured a slab for this tower. Because we didn't want to disturb the ground, on Mauna Kea, we actually prefabricated big concrete slabs, and those were simply stacked on the ground, and then the tower was bolted to the top slab of the stack. So once it was removed, there's essentially no trace of that it was there.
And when you say other sites, are you referring to other sites outside of Hawaii?
Yes. Yeah, all.
Was the road down to the site graded as part of this site testing campaign?
No, not to any great extent. It was terrible. Yeah.
Okay. So when you say no to not any great extent, was there any extent involved in grading?
There may have been one or two large rocks moved, but no, it was not graded.
Okay, thank you. So how have you been assigned specific responsibilities as it pertains to the TMT project?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Let me repeat that. So how have you been assigned those specific responsibilities as mentioned as it pertains to the TMT project?
How was I assigned, for example, the role in the site testing?
Yes.
That's the question. I think it was a natural, well, obviously it was an agreement with the director, which at that time was Rolf Kudrytsky, not Hassinger.
Could you spell that last name, sir?
Kudrytsky?
Yes.
Kudritzki.
Thank you.
Okay. And the other part was the CDA, right? Your role in that.
Yes, and that was also prior to Dr. Hassinger's arrival. I think to answer your question, though, that was really a natural part of my job description. So it didn't involve any departure from past practice. I have been involved in similar work on a number of previous astronomy development projects.
Okay. Who financed the site testing campaign?
That was financed by 30-meter telescope. I think by 30-meter telescope, but yes.
Okay.
Well, at least let me clarify that a little bit. The actual purchase of the equipment and the expenses in connection with placing the equipment at the site, the personnel that worked on it, that was all TMT. The staff time, my time, and so on, we paid. That wasn't reimbursed by TMT. That was a contribution by UH. So everybody paid their own expenses, if you look at it that way.
So if the TMT is a separate entity and not part of the University of Hawaii, then why was personnel and UH resources being used for this particular site campaign?
Well, because we were interested in attracting the TMT to Mauna Kea.
And we say we, who do you refer to as we?
The Institute for Astronomy.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to move on to another set of questions. Thank you. So prior to becoming associate director at the Institute for Astronomy, what was your position, title at staff of the Canada-France-Hawaii Telescope?
It was a variety of positions. When I arrived, I was actually a visitor. It was a sabbatical leave from the University of Toronto in Canada. I then stayed a little longer than originally intended, and I was what was called a support astronomer or resident astronomer for a year. And then I went into the management side of things. I was 3 years as the associate director and then 3 years as the executive director at CFHT.
And so so did you come to Hawaii specific to work for Canada-France Hawaii Telescope?
Well, actually, as a visitor, I was
Right.
initially intended to return to Toronto.
Okay, and then later you returned, then you continued in employment.
Well, sort of one thing led to another, yes, and I stayed there 8 years.
Okay. And so it's fair to say that you were not born in Hawaii?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to direct you to page 1, paragraph 1 of your written direct testimony.
Yep.
Actually, I'm going to skip that because it was already noted that Exhibit A119 is not your correct criteria. Okay, I'm going to skip that question. Sorry. Next set of questions. Does the general lease number S-4191 to the University of Hawaii for the Mauna Kea Science Reserve expire on December 31st, 2033?
Yes.
Does the year 2033 referenced in your written direct testimony pertain to the expiration of this general lease?
Indirectly, it does. I believe the direct testimony refers to the expiration date of the various subleases, but they're all coterminous with the master lease, so yes.
Okay, thank you. The next set of questions I'm going to reference are in your Exhibit A13 regarding the decommissioning plan. I'm not sure if you have a copy of that A13, and if not, the council could provide you with that.
Yes, if we're going to talk about that, I think we need to have it displayed.
Okay, thank you. So as they're getting your council gets, the UH council gets their Exhibit A13 prepared for you, I'm just going to ask you some general questions regarding the decommissioning plan. When was the decommissioning plan finalized?
I believe it was 2009.
I'm sorry, what are you bringing up? Or
Bringing Exhibit A13 up to the witness so he has a copy of it in front of him.
Good, thank you.
So maybe I'll wait. I'm going to scratch that question, and I'm going to re-ask it once you have a document in front of you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Gotta find it. Just take.
So I'm going to re-ask the question. When was this decommissioning plan finalized?
Well, in the cover it's dated January 2010, but I think it was actually finalized in 2009. And
So what's the discrepancy in the dates presenting as 2009 and what's on the cover of January 2010?
I don't know. It's in the introductory paragraph on page 1 of the plan. Let me pull this up. Let's see. You'll notice that the approval dates there are 2009, and that was what I based my testimony on. So I didn't prepare the published version, so I can't explain why it says January 2010 on the cover.
Okay, so a reference back to the paragraph you're referring to, is that paragraph 1, second sentence, it states as was required as a condition of approval of the CMP by the Board of Land and Natural Resources,
yes,
DLNR, in April 2009. Are you referring to that particular date? I'm just trying to get clarity.
No, you're right. That reference doesn't work.
Okay.
But, I guess what I'm saying is that my understanding is that the actual two approvals, the BLNR and the BOR, were in 2009.
Okay, so that's just based upon what you believe it might be. Okay. So let's look at in page 29 of the decommissioning plan, Exhibit A13, Section 5.1, life cycle of a telescope facilities.
I can display it if you wish.
Yes, please, thank you. So on page 29 of this particular decommissioning plan, does it correctly state that section 5.1, life cycle of a telescope facilities?
Yes.
Could you please provide a definition of the term life cycle as it pertains to telescope facilities?
Yes, it's the sequence of events that begin with the commissioning or perhaps even the planning and development of the telescope right the way through to its construction, its commissioning, its use, and then its eventual, the end of the use stage and decommissioning and removal.
Okay, thank you.
So complete life cycle.
So on page 31 of the decommissioning plan, Exhibit A13, second paragraph, I will bring your attention to there.
So there's 31, and then what was the
Page
rest?
31, second paragraph.
Second paragraph, yes.
And the third sentence. It states, starts with the letter, the word 3.
What you're talking about these, well, that's, you're talking about this paragraph here?
Is that the...
Or this one here?
Yeah, that one.
This one?
Yes.
The one that begins for the other 12 telescopes?
Yes.
No decommissioning date is foreseen at the present time?
Yes.
No, yes. It reads, for the other 12 telescopes, no decommissioning date is foreseen at the present time.
Is that correct?
At the time it was written, yes. I think the underlying assumption being that decommissioning in 2033 would be implied if there weren't, at the end of their sublease. So no decommissioning prior to 2033 was foreseen.
Let me relook at this question. So it's really asking at that present time, and I guess we're based upon the present time of 2010, if that's when this document is noted as such. Mm-hmm. And is it correct? Is it fair to say in 2010 that no decommissioning, that for the other 12 telescopes, no decommissioning date was foreseen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And there's the third sentence in that paragraph, beginning with 3 of the O/IR telescopes.
Yes. Yes, I see that.
Okay. So it mentions 3 telescopes. CFHT, what telescope is that referring to?
That's Canada, France, Hawaii telescope.
And it refers to IRTF, what telescope does it refer to?
That's the NASA Infrared Telescope Facility.
And it refers to DKIRT, what does that telescope refer to?
That is the United Kingdom Infrared Telescope.
Okay. So what is the expected productive life cycle of the Canada, France, Hawaii telescope?
Do you mean what is the projected longevity of the telescope?
I'm going back to your definition of life cycle. So based upon your definition of a life cycle, what is the expected productive life cycle of the Canada, France, Hawaii telescope?
Well, the life cycle, as I defined it, was not a specific period of time. It was a sequence of events. So the life cycle of the Canada, France, Hawaii telescope would be the same life cycle as any telescope, the beginning, the use, and the end. Not different, yeah.
Okay, so would its life cycle extend beyond 2033?
Well, it could if there weren't absent other considerations that came into play. Yes, the life cycle of the CFHT could extend beyond 2033.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
In the same context, and could the life cycle of the IRTF extend beyond 2033?
Yes.
And could the life cycle of the Keck telescopes extend beyond 2033?
Yes.
And could the life cycle of the Subaru telescope extend beyond the life cycle of, could the life cycle of the Subaru telescope extend beyond 2033?
Yes.
What would be the expected productive life cycle of the TMT if built?
What is the expected duration of the life cycle? That's your question?
Let me re-ask the question. What would be the expected productive life cycle of the TMT if built?
I think you're asking duration. This is the only way I can interpret your question, because the elements of the life cycle are the same for any telescope. But if your question is what is the duration of its useful lifetime,
yes,
in principle, I think it could be as much as 100 years.
Okay. So it's fair to say that its life cycle would extend beyond 2033?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Thank you. So on page 2 of your written direct testimony.
Page 2, yep.
You state that Caltech is in a process of decommissioning the CSO. Is that correct?
Yes.
Does the CSO refer to the Caltech submillimeter observatory?
Yes, it does.
What type of telescope is this?
It's a submillimeter telescope.
What is the approximate height of its observatory dome?
I'm guessing that the telescope mirror itself is 10-meter aperture, so I'm guessing that the overall height would be at least 15 meters, but I don't know that number accurately.
What is the approximate diameter size of its observatory dome?
12 or 13 meters, maybe a bit more.
How long has its life cycle been?
It was commissioned in 1987, I believe, and it ended its scientific life last year, 2015, so I guess that's 28 years.
Why is it being decommissioned?
It's being decommissioned because Caltech has decided that they do not wish to fund the operation any longer. So it's basically lost its financial support.
Okay. About how long will it take to dismantle and remove this observatory from Mauna Kea?
It would, I'm guessing a little bit, but the actual dismantling and removal, I would expect, would take approximately a year.
Okay. On page 26, Exhibit A13 of the decommissioning plan.
Page 26, is that
yes,
what you said? Okay.
Second paragraph.
Mic cord's a nuisance. Having a little trouble finding 26. Oh no, here we go. I see what happened. Looks like, is it this page that you want? That's what's got me confused.
Yes, second paragraph.
Second paragraph.
So in the second paragraph, it describes three levels of site restoration. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And these 3 levels include minimal restoration, moderate restoration, and full restoration. Is that correct?
Correct.
What level of site restoration is the CSO expected to be completed as part of its decommissioning?
I don't know.
When would that be known?
I don't know for sure.
Who makes that determination as far as the level of restoration?
That determination is made as part of the decommissioning process, right? It's a number of entities are involved, including the Office of Mauna Kea Management, Kahukumauna Mauna Kea Management Board, and if I'm not mistaken, the ultimate approval of the decommissioning plan is with the University Board of Regents, perhaps, well, maybe the president, we'd have to check. And then the DLNR may get involved depending on whether they require a permit. So there's a fairly complicated process of consultation in order to settle those details. I should point out as a disclaimer that this is not an area that I'm involved in. I'm not the Office of Mauna Kea Management or any of the entities that I mentioned. As I mentioned earlier, I put the plan in evidence because I wanted to focus on the Chapter 5.
Okay, so the reason I'm asking you that these particular questions regarding this plan is exactly why is that you have submitted this as one of your exhibits, A13.
Yeah. Right.
So as a follow-up to that, at this point in time, is it fair to say it's unclear as far as the level of restoration being proposed for the CSO?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Going back to the decommissioning plan, Exhibit A13, Section 5.2, pages 29 to 30.
We're going to run out again. This is 4.
So actually, we'll start with page 29.
Yep.
At the bottom of the page 29, it states Section 5.2, site recycling. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if and when the CSO is decommissioned, could the TMT be built on that particular site?
I doubt it.
Okay. Was there any analysis done as looking at this particular site as an alternative site for the TMT?
I think there was some preliminary analysis. It's a long time ago. My recollection is that the horizon is obscured enough there that it would limit where the telescope could look.
Okay.
But
and what is it true too that the determination to decommission CSO was made after the CDUA was submitted?
no, the announcement was made prior to the CDUA being submitted.
Was the announcement of the decommissioning of the CSO made prior to the final environmental impact statement?
Yes, I think so. The announcement, I think, preceded both of those documents.
And so, based upon your understanding, did the FEIS consider this site as an alternative site on Mauna Kea?
Not that I recall.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Why wasn't, I mean, you mentioned, going back to you mentioning site 13 North on the Northern Plateau. why was that the only site considered as a location for the TMT project?
Do you mean why was it the only site on Mauna Kea?
Yes.
Okay, in fact, I don't think it, in the very initial stages when we were deciding where to do the site testing, I think another site was considered, for the site testing at least, that was somewhat closer to the other facilities. But by the time we were doing the site testing, we had decided that to test 13 North.
So at the time you did the site testing, and going back to 2005 and 2008, it was already predetermined that the TMT project would be at that particular site.
Almost. I think if the conditions had turned out to be quite much poorer than was anticipated, then some reconsideration would have been done. But I think it's fair to say that if the site testing revealed that the quality was, what was expected, then effectively that was the site that was going to be proposed for the 30-meter telescope.
So going back to the site testing, just to clarify, on Mauna Kea, you folks only did one site for site testing, one location, I should say.
We tested only one location, that is correct.
In the master plan, there's another proposal for another potential site on the northern plateau, which is further towards the east. Are you familiar with that particular site?
Yes. Yes, I think I know what you're talking. You're talking about the master plan, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
When you look at the northern plateau, there's a section where you're referring to in 13 North, and there's a site further to the east. Why didn't you folks, when I say you folks, why wasn't a site testing done on that particular site?
Well, I think if you look at the master plan, the site to the north of CFHT is area F.
Yes.
Right. That was proposed as a possible or suitable location if we were to develop another 8 or 10 meter class telescope. The master plan identified area E as the appropriate location for what was called a next generation large telescope, NGLT, which took form as the TMT. And it was area E that was proposed for the TMT.
Okay.
So, I mean, the simple answer is area E, which includes 13 North, was the was the area most suitable for the TMT.
So based upon your knowledge, the TMT is classified as an NGLT.
Oh, definitely, yes.
Okay, thank you. Is the UKIRT being proposed for decommissioning?
The situation with UKIRT is that when the scientific use of UKIRT ends, that site, UKIRT will be removed, the site restored, and there'll be no further facility at that location.
Could the TMT observatory be built on that particular site?
No.
Why so?
It's Summit Ridge site. It would, in order to put the TMT there, one would have to do a really large amount of grading in order to get a flat area large enough to accommodate that telescope. I'm not even sure it would be physically possible, but you would end up with a very large transformation of the landform, and especially if you had to, I'm not sure you could do it and keep the 2.2 meter. It might even affect Gemini. So that kind of an idea was rejected very early on because of the amount of grading that would be needed to put the TMT in the summit area, in the Summit Ridge area.
So how would it affect Gemini?
I'm just using my imagination here, but I mean, to clear an area large enough to accommodate the TMT, you'd have to cut away a fair bit of the Summit Ridge, but in order to maintain Gemini, you'd have to have some kind of an embankment. That, it was. Okay. I think it'd be difficult to engineer all of that in that area.
Okay. And just to clarify for the record,
leaving aside all of the other considerations that were in the master plan about the desirability of not locating any additional facilities on the Summit Ridge.
Okay. So just to clarify to the record, Gemini, we're referring to the Gemini Observatory.
Gemini North Telescope, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So is there an existing telescope site on the Kukaha'ula Ridge where the TMT could be built if that site was recycled?
No.
Why not?
The same reason I explained that it couldn't be put at the Euchert site. It just take too much grading. Well, also that we had commitments to the facilities that are there, so we couldn't tell them to leave. So, but it simply was out of the question to put a telescope that large on the Summit Ridge.
So just to clarify, that even if there was a site available, it could not be located on the Summit Ridge.
That's correct, and that was the conclusion in the master plan too. Mm-hmm.
So is there any area on the Kukaha'ula Summit Ridge where the TMT could be located?
No.
And the reason why?
The same reason as I've already stated, because of the topography.
Okay. What is the approximate height above the finished grade of the proposed TMT observatory?
Approximately 185 feet, 187 feet, I believe.
Okay, thank you. What is the approximate diameter of the proposed TMT observatory?
I don't remember the number. It's in the document.
So,
Mr. Flores, sorry to interrupt, but do you have quite a bit more, or?
I'm going to request additional time and to due cause. I believe I could finish in 25 minutes.
Okay, you've already gone about 40.
Yes.
I'm okay with that, but I'm wondering, this area of testimony seems beyond what this witness was called for. I understand that you're able to ask him questions about the CDUA based on his testimony in answer to one of your questions. But I'm wondering, now we're going into essentially the choice of the site, and I'm not sure this witness is qualified to do that.
Well,
So I'm just sort of anticipating there's going to be objections and asking you to kind of hone in.
Well, actually, is this point of testimony has to do with the decommissioning plan, as noted, and he was brought up here by order. I mean, proof of as such that he is testifying on the decommissioning plan.
So tell me how your questions about the choice of site go to the decommissioning plan.
So it goes to several points. So when going to the decommissioning plan, part of the decommissioning plan is looking at site recycling. And so the point is, are there available sites? If you follow the decommissioning plan, if a site is available for recycling, is there any available sites on the Kukaha'ula Summit Ridge? So my line of question is specific as outlined. Page 29 of Exhibit A13, 5.2, site recycling, and as well as page 25, extent of site restoration, and as other pages noted.
Okay.
And so my questions are directly to what he came up here to discuss on decommissioning.
Okay, I was having a hard time connecting the two. But go ahead.
And just to clarify, so decommissioning also, part of the decommissioning plan also includes looking at site recycling.
I hear you.
And so the question, the question being posed is could the TMT potentially be used on some potential sites that could be recycled?
Right.
Can I
Go ahead.
continue, please? And I tend to continue with directly to his written testimony.
If you could ask the direct question, that would be great.
Okay. Is it also true that as regarding to site recycling on the Kukaha'ula Ridge, that any new telescope to be built on a recycle site on Kukaha'ula Ridge is limited to the height of 130 feet?
Yes, I believe that's in the master plan.
And why is that so?
To minimize or limit the visual impact of the facility that's there.
Is it also because it might obstruct the line of sight of existing observatories on the Mauna Kea's Kukaha'ula Summit Ridge?
That could be a consideration depending on the details, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So then, based upon that, is it true to say that the TMT Observatory could not be built on any recycle site of the Summit Ridge because its observatory height is at 180-something feet?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, thank you. On page 3, paragraph 1 of your written direct testimony, you state that the assumption that at least 10 other astronomy facilities on Mauna Kea would continue beyond 2033. Is that correct?
That's what it says in the decommissioning plan, yes.
Okay. Did the University of Hawaii attempt to get a new general lease approved from DLNR that would extend beyond 2033 for the lands of Mauna Kea?
Sorry, what was the verb there?
Sorry, let me repeat that and I'll restate that. Did the University of Hawaii attempt to get a new general lease approved from DLNR that would extend beyond 2033 for the lands on Mauna Kea?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Were any new general leases approved by DLNR that would extend beyond 2033?
No.
Was this attempt deferred by the university in order to complete an environmental assessment?
An environmental impact statement, I believe, yes. And
has this environmental impact statement been completed yet?
No.
Okay, next set of questions. And one alternative in such an environmental assessment is a no-action alternative, under which the existing general lease number S4191 would run its course, and the University of Hawaii and its subleases would terminate their uses no later than the end of 2033. Is that correct to say?
That's a correct statement.
And if that happens, then would the existing telescopes have to be decommissioned based upon the guidelines of the decommissioning plan as such? Is that correct?
Effectively, yes, I think.
And all the existing facilities would eventually be decommissioned and the land would be returned to DLNR. Is that correct?
I'm going to say not exactly. I think what would happen would have to be consistent with the terms of the general lease, which don't don't exactly say that that's the only outcome.
Okay, thank you. So the TMT Observatory was built, and there was no new general lease that extended beyond 2033. Would the TMT have to follow the decommissioning plan as such?
Yes.
Does the TMT have its own decommissioning plan?
They have elements of it, yes, that are addressed in the Conservation District use application. I think they also have submitted a funding plan, a preliminary funding plan, but
okay. So in your testimony, why wasn't that included as part of your testimony regarding, since we're discussing the TMT project, why wasn't the TMT parts of their decommissioning plan included in part of your testimony as well?
Oh, because my testimony was focusing on the removal of other facilities to somewhat compensate for the physical presence of TMT.
Okay.
So I see the topic was decommissioning and limits to future growth, not per se the decommissioning aspects of TMT.
Okay, thank you. So in event that the master lease expired in 2033 and there was no new lease provided to University of Hawaii, how many years would it take to decommission the TMT if it was built?
I would be guessing 3 or 4.
About 3 or 4 years. And that's
from start to finish, yes, I think
okay.
it could take that long.
And that's with the planning only, or is that with the physical removal, or is that the whole process?
As I said, this is a pure guess right on my part, but knowing what's involved, I would think it would be at least 3 or 4 years between the notice of intent stage and the removal of the facility.
Okay. So if the University of Hawaii was not able to attain a new general lease for the Mauna Kea Science Reserve beyond 2033, would it still be viable to build a TMT observatory?
You're asking for my opinion?
Yes, based upon your knowledge of decommissioning.
Okay, because some others might have a different opinion.
Yes.
Okay. If it were known today that there would be no extension of the lease beyond 2033, I'm virtually certain that the TMT would not decide to proceed.
Okay, thank you. So wouldn't it be beneficial to the partners of TIO of the proposed $1.4 billion project to have the matter pertaining to the new general lease determined before TIO starts construction?
If that were feasible, yes.
Otherwise, wouldn't this be another example of putting the cart before the horse? If the TMT Observatory started construction only to find out later that it would have to be decommissioned by 2033.
What was the question?
So the question was, otherwise, wouldn't this be another example of putting the cart before the horse? If the TMT Observatory started construction only to find out later that it would have to be decommissioned by 2033.
No.
Okay. Your Honor, I just have a few more questions to wrap up my questioning. I wish to continue, please. Thank you. Okay, based upon a decommissioning plan, page 7, section 2.2.4, site abandonment.
Maybe. Do you want
So once again, in referencing on the decommissioning plan, Exhibit A13, page 7, section 2.2.4, site abandonment, is that the section noted as such?
Yes.
Is it possible that a sub-leasee could abandon an observatory in place without deconstructing and site restoration?
Is it possible?
Yes.
Do you mean is it physically possible, or do you mean is it permissible?
And is it possible?
I suppose anything's possible.
And that's, I guess that's why that certain section addresses that. Is that correct?
But that would be a violation, in most cases, that would be a violation of their agreement and their commitment.
Right, but there might be a circumstance where the existing telescope is not capable of fulfilling that commitment. Is that true?
It's conceivable, yes.
Okay.
I mean, it could happen.
If this happens, then is it correct to state that the University of Hawaii, as the leasee to DLNR, will ultimately be responsible for the site through the terms of their master lease?
Yes.
Okay. And if UH is ultimately responsible, then would that burden fall upon Hawaii state taxpayers?
It'd fall on the university.
And is the university funded by Hawaii state taxpayers?
Funded in part, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. On page 3 of your paragraph 1 of your written direct testimony, you referenced the letter from the university president Klassner to DLNR chairperson Suzanne Case, dated November 17, 2015, submitted as Exhibit A39. Is that correct?
Yes.
It states in this letter, quote, that the 30-meter telescope TMT project site is the last new area on the mountain where a telescope project will be contemplated or sought. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
It also states, quote, UH will decommission 3 telescopes permanently and as soon as possible, though all must be completed before TMT can go into operation, and no new observatories will be constructed on those sites. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Which 3 telescopes are the UH proposing for decommission?
At the present time, CSO, UCURT, and Hokukea.
But as far as UCURT, that hasn't been finalized yet, though.
There's been no notice of intent submitted for UCURT, that's correct.
Has a notice of intent been submitted for Hokukea?
Yes.
Okay. So based upon these statements, it would still be possible to build new observatories on other recycled sites. Is that correct?
Yes.
Based upon these statements, would it still be possible to build new observatories on existing sites?
Well, that would be a version of recycling.
Okay.
Yeah. But yes.
Based upon these statements, would it still be possible to build an observatory larger than the footprint of the existing or recycled site?
Yes.
Were the proposed actions referenced in this letter ever approved by the University of Hawaii Board of Regents?
I don't know.
Okay.
Do you mean the submission of the letter?
Yes. What's represented in this letter, Exhibit A39, was this proposed actions ever approved by the University of Hawaii Board of Regents?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. If it wasn't approved by the University of Hawaii Board of Regents, how can this letter constitute a legal binding commitment?
Objection, argumentative.
Are you arguing with the witness?
Okay. Based upon your understanding that this letter wasn't approved by the Board of Regents, what's stated in there, is it still legally binding?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Since you're, does the University of Hawaii President Klassner have any legal authority to constitute a legal binding commitment?
Objection, calls for a legal conclusion, assumes facts, not evidence.
Where are we going with this?
I think if you look at this Exhibit A39, third paragraph, it states, this letter shall constitute a legally binding commitment and may be regarded as a condition by the University of Hawaii's current lease and any lease renewal or extension proposed by the university.
Your Honor, the document speaks for itself. The witness has already testified that he cannot provide a legal analysis of the letter. The letter says what it says.
So, and also my concern is you're asking him to speak about President Klassner, and I'm not sure he's qualified to do that. So,
Okay.
if I can ask you to move to your next question.
I'll move to my
perhaps.
next question. I just have
All right.
2 more questions left.
All right,
Thank
sure.
you. Is it true that you included Exhibit A39 within your written direct testimony as a
Yes.
reference?
Yes.
Why did you do so?
I wanted to show the response that the university had made to the governor's requests.
Okay.
In particular, dealing with the two subjects of the letter.
Okay. Do you recall who the university president was when the university submitted the CDA to BNR in 2010 for the TMT project?
I believe it was David McClane.
Okay.
Well, wait. I'm not sure. It would be either September 2010, I believe, is the, I don't know, I don't have it. It was very close to the transition between McClane and Marcy Greenwood.
Okay.
Greenwood. So I'm not sure, Kalani.
Okay, thank you. That's fine. So since the time of your employment at the University of Hawaii, from let me strike that question. So your employment at the University of Hawaii has been since 1982, is that correct?
No. Since 1990 at UH.
And that's, okay. So since your employment at the University of Hawaii from 1990 to present, about how many different UH presidents have you worked under?
Too many. I'll just do them by name. Albert Simone. Let's see. Doug Bell. Him. Marcy Greenwood. Well, Dave McClane for a while, Marcy Greenwood, and now Dave Lassner.
And roughly how many UH presidents have there been?
5, I guess, right?
Okay. My last question. What would prevent another UH president from writing on...
Excuse me, Ken Mortimer. How could I forget?
Okay, so...
I'm sorry, Ken Mortimer.
So perhaps
Between Simone and Dobell.
Okay, thank you.
Evan.
So what would prevent another UH president from writing another letter to rescind this letter to allow construction of additional telescopes in new areas on Mauna Kea?
What would prevent?
Yes.
Okay, I would say two things. One, this putative future president respecting the commitments, feeling that he or she needed to respect commitments made by his predecessor, be one. And one would be the possibility that these commitments got written into other documents, such as a new lease or that kind of thing, as is suggested in the letter that we looked at.
So as of this time now, has any of these commitments been written in any documents?
Only the letter.
Only this letter that's presented
To my
as
knowledge, yeah.
839.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, this concludes my cross questions. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. McClaren, and thank you,
All right, thank you, Mr. Flores.
Your Honor, for your time.
Ms. Ward?
Good afternoon, Dr. McClaren.
Afternoon.
My name's Deborah Ward. Judge, I had approximately 50 questions, about which 10 of which were answered. About 24 of those are yes and no, but I do believe this is going to go on more than about 20 minutes, and I think we have housekeeping at 4.
Yes.
May I start and then ask to continue
Well,
at a later
I think
time?
if we go according to what you've just represented, we'll end at 4.
I don't think so.
You said 20 minutes, it's 3:35.
No, I have, well, no, that's not, excuse me, that's not really what I meant. I have approximately 50 questions.
Well, we need to begin then.
Thank you.
All right.
Dr. McClaren, you've explained in your cross-examination with Mr. Flores that your role as Associate Director for the Institute of Astronomy includes observatory activities. You're Administrative Supervisor for the Mauna Kea Support Services, sorry. And do you have knowledge of day-to-day operations of the telescopes?
Knowledge of which?
Of the day-to-day operations of the telescopes?
No, generally not day-to-day operations of the telescopes.
Okay. You testified in cross that you were not the person responsible for decommissioning, and I understand that you're speaking on behalf of the decommissioning plan, but can you tell who is responsible for decommissioning, please?
Office of Mauna Kea Management
I see.
administers the decommissioning plan.
I see. In your testimony on page 1, you state that the decommissioning plan calls for extensive program of advanced planning, consultation, and approvals that must begin before the actual removal starts. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And is an environmental assessment also required?
Depends on the circumstances. I think that's one of the things that's determined fairly early on in the process.
Okay. And then must a conservation district use application be submitted to the Board of Land and Natural Resources?
I think that's another thing that needs to be determined by DLNR.
Okay. You state that this must begin several years before physical removal starts. Is that a true statement?
Yes.
Okay. And you stated that the process begins when the notice of intent is filed. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. So on page 2, you state that there were 13 telescopes on Mauna Kea in 2009. Is that number still correct today?
There are no longer 13 in operation.
I see. But the physical facility is still there.
The physical, yes, it's still
Okay.
13 physical facilities, yes.
Okay. And then you go on to say in that same paragraph that in 2009, which was 6 years ago, Caltech, or CSO, announced that it would decommission the CSO and remove it during the period 2016 to 2018. Is that correct?
Other than 2009 is 7 years ago, but yeah.
I'm sorry. Is it true, as you say, that the notice of intent was submitted in November of 2015?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So can you explain the 7-year delay between the decommissioning announcement and the issuance of the notice of intent?
Yes, I think, well, I'd have to guess a little bit. One, I mean, I don't think the decommissioning plan was in place when the original announcement was made by Caltech. And I also think that the notice of intent is, I think the notice of intent is properly done when you have a fairly good idea of, when you're fairly closer to the event. So, and have, for example, know when you're going to stop the scientific operations.
I see. Would you mind looking at the decommissioning plan, A13?
No.
I believe it's on page 24, table 5.
Yeah, I think but which chapter? Which chapter? That's, because I think, that's what a bit confusing here.
Yes, it is. Let's see. So I have two pages that I have tagged.
Find it.
Page 24. That chapter is 4.4 under reporting. I apologize. I thought that I had the decommissioning plan myself since I've been involved for quite a while, but it turns out I have a draft. So I did look it up on my computer, but I don't have my computer here.
I'm closing in on it.
It was table 5. It was under reporting. No, this one. Really messed up. It's called the timeline for developing and implementing a site decommissioning plan, and I'm really sorry. I thought I had the original, the real version, and apparently I have the draft in front of me. But it does say that and you say in your testimony that the notice of intent is the very first thing that you do when you it says your testimony says the process begins when the notice of intent is filed.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I won't ask you to go to A13 because I've got the wrong page.
Okay.
So after the notice of intent is filed and DLNR determines that an environmental assessment and a CDUA will be required, how long would you say that planning process would take before the beginning of deconstruction?
I'd be guessing on that because it depends on what exactly has to be done.
Mm-hmm.
As I say, wasn't my goal to testify on the details of the decommissioning plan.
Okay. You do say that it's spelled out in the subplan, so
Well,
that's why
if I had to answer that question, I would go to the decommissioning plan and read it.
Okay. Now that the notice of intent has been issued,
Yeah.
how long would you estimate that providing an environmental assessment
Yeah.
and achieving a conservation district use permit would take before the beginning of the deconstruction plan development?
I would expect that they would they could begin in 2017 or very early 2018. In other words, I think they'll make their goal of being finished in 2018.
Okay. Can you cite anywhere in the world where a modern facility has been deconstructed?
Off the top of my head, no. And that was one of the challenges in, I wrote the section of the Chapter 5 section of the decommissioning plan. In fact, the section that Mr. Flores pointed out, and I think I mentioned there that there aren't many good examples of this. So right at the top of my head, no, I can't quote a good an analog for what we're doing here with CSO, and I think that is something that will contribute to the length of time that it takes. We're doing it for the first time, and we don't have a lot of good examples.
Thank you. So if this is correct, then that you've never worked with an entity that has experience in deconstruction of a telescope?
No.
Okay. Wait, is that correct or not correct?
Have you ever worked with an entity that has experience in deconstructing
The
a
answer to
telescope?
that is no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I hate asking
Yeah,
double negatives,
double
so I
negative.
apologize.
Well, I just wanted to be sure I got the answer right.
Yeah.
That's all.
Can you begin to estimate the number of workers that might be needed to deconstruct a telescope?
You're asking for a rough guess. On site, do you mean?
Sir, we're not
Yes.
asking, there is no guessing here. So if you know, you answer. If you don't know, you say you don't know.
I'll say no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea where those workers would be housed, should they, since you don't know a number, but do you have any idea where they might be housed?
Yes.
Where would that be?
They could be housed at the mid-level facility at Halepahaku.
Okay. How many beds or dormitory facilities are available for workers?
Potentially as many as 30, perhaps more, if we had to.
If the deconstruction were taking place during the development and construction of the 30-meter telescope, as you project, that there will be 3 decommissioned during that time, and there were 100, which is the estimate for the 30-meter telescope, housed at the Halepohaku facility as well, would the Halepohaku facility be able to accomplish housing both the deconstruction workers and the construction workers?
If the numbers were as large as you mentioned, hypothetically, probably not.
Okay. During the deconstruction period, where would the materials be that are being removed be stored?
I don't know that level of detail.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you know where, once they were removed from the site, do you know where they would be taken?
No.
Okay. Because you say that it's not known yet what site restoration would look like, do you know whether under what circumstances the electrical conduits that are underground would be removed?
No.
Do you know how the drainage and the sewage and the septic systems would be removed?
No.
How would the construction crews know where the boundaries would be between the facility and the UH managed areas?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Well, I'm just wondering how a construction unit, or a construction company, for example, would know where the boundaries are for what they're doing.
Well, 2 things. One, there is a defined subleased area for the telescope facility, so they could use that area for those purposes, or if they needed more area, they could work with UH to to get a larger area available. That would be part of the planning process for the decommissioning.
I see. So they would have some sort of delineation between what's in the facility area and what's outside the facility area?
So I don't understand the question.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out, if I were a construction worker or a contractor, how would I know where I could put things and where I could not?
Oh, by the time there was a plan, it would be clear what areas could be used for those activities.
Mm-hmm.
That would be part of the planning process.
I see. Whose responsibility would it be if there were, for instance, an accident on the road itself, during construction or deconstruction?
Yes, it would depend on the nature of the accident. I suppose the principal responsibility would be with the entity that was operating the vehicle.
I see. So I'm going to move on for now, and then I might have to come back. Are the telescope facilities responsible for what happens inside the facility?
Yeah.
Okay. And if something happened inside the telescope but affected the land outside the telescope, how would that be handled?
I think the principal responsibility for that, if you talk about responsibility, would be for the entity operating that telescope, if that's what you mean by handled.
Well, for example, I've heard, and I'm not trying to testify, I'm trying to clarify, but I've heard in the past that what happens inside the telescope is the telescope's responsibility. What happens outside is OMKM, or Office of Mauna Kea Management.
Yeah.
I'm asking if you understand it that way.
Yes, that's kind of a broad brush explanation of the division of responsibility. Yes, I do.
So how is I don't know if you can answer a legal question, but I'm wondering how the liability of each telescope is delineated.
Objection.
Okay.
Calls for speculation. The witness has already repeatedly said that he's not in a position to answer legal questions about liability.
I'm really trying to find out if the university is ultimately responsible for liability relative to the general lease, and I don't know who to ask.
This is not the witness to ask.
Okay. So if a chemical spill were to happen inside the telescope, but it were to drain beyond the telescope, for example, into a French drain outside the telescope, would that still be the telescope's responsibility?
Objection, hypothetical question, which the...
Well, it's not hypothetical, ma'am. I believe there are 22 spills reported by telescope facilities since 2009. Until 2009, I don't have a number after that, but I can point to the comprehensive management plan that describes the spills.
Well, it's still a hypothetical, right? You're saying if this were to happen.
Well, it has happened. So how is it handled? Is that a better question?
Well, then you have to lay the foundation. Does this witness know that? But more importantly, you're asking again, whose legal responsibility would that be?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're asking this witness to give you a legal interpretation or answer.
No, I actually asked how it was handled. I didn't ask about the responsibility.
I'm sorry, I thought you were asking about
No,
that.
my question was, how would a chemical spill inside the telescope be handled?
Okay, so there's no telescope, there's no spill right now, so you need to lay the foundation if he knows of other scopes where there were spills, and then the outcome. That's what we mean by foundation.
Okay. On the university exhibit A9, there is a table 6.2, and the PDF page is 101, and the physical page is 6-9. And there are 2 pages, and the table title is Hazardous Material of Sewage Spills Associated with Astronomy Operations on Mauna Kea. And the document is dated January 2009. So this is a table demonstrating the 22 spills that were documented between 2005 and 2008.
Mr. Sanderson?
We object to this line of questioning. It's well beyond the scope of direct, and we would like a offer of proof as to how it connects up with decommissioning.
Okay, Dr. McClaren, are you responsible for administration of Mauna Kea Support Services?
Yes.
Is the Mauna Kea Support Services the first line of investigation should there be, or response, should there be a spill from a telescope facility?
No.
What is that? What is the first line of response?
The practice has been, the experience, is that the first line of response is the facility itself.
Okay, thank you. That's basically where I wanted to get. Dr. McClaren, if there is a hydraulic spill of a fluid outside the facility, for example, in a UH managed area, what would be the entity responsible for the first response in that case?
I can answer by experience of how those have been handled in the past, and it's the same answer as I had before. In those type of instances in the past, the facility responsible for, or that created that spill, took care of it.
Okay.
And that was the understanding that we had with them.
If, in the case of the sewage spill that happened in 2008 near Halepohaku, it was 1,000 gallons of sewage. What entity was responsible?
Well, that would be Mauna Kea Support Services, because it's their facility.
Okay.
Yeah.
On page 3 of your testimony, you stated that Governor Ige has directed that the university is committed to decommissioning 3 telescope facilities before the completion of the 30-meter telescope. Is that correct?
Yes.
You also state on page 3 that current projections are that at least 4 other facilities, including the CSO, the VLBA, the UKIRT, that's UKIRT, and either the JCMT or the SMA would undergo this decommissioning process before the end of 2033. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is early decommissioning a violation of the sublease?
No.
Is it expected?
Can you rephrase the question?
Sure. In the sublease, one, I understand the subleasees expect that they will be able to either do astronomy through their expected life, or they will be required to decommission by 2033. If they're asked to decommission early, is this something that is allowed in the sublease or expected by the facility?
No, it isn't.
Okay. What are the consequences of decommissioning early, of the governor's decision to require early decommissioning?
Could you be a bit more specific?
Are there financial consequences? Is anybody expected to pay for the loss of viewing time?
Well, at any given time, the responsibility for decommissioning is well defined. And so whenever the decommissioning should occur, that entity is responsible.
That I understand, but if a facility was expecting that they would have at least until 2033 in viewing time, and then that amount of viewing time was cut back perhaps by 10 years, would there be any consequences that the university would have to bear, or the taxpayer would have to bear?
Well, that's a hypothetical question that I don't think that situation would arise.
Well, if we are...
Let me be clear. We're not contemplating any sort of non-voluntary decommissioning where a facility has a sublease.
I see.
So that doesn't figure in the picture at all. So I think that's the situation that you're asking about.
Is the decommissioning of the UCURT voluntary?
The UCURT is owned now by the University of Hawaii. So it's our decision.
And who will pay the decommissioning funds necessary to decommission the UCURT?
It hasn't been approved. There's no notice of intent.
Right.
UCURT was simply identified in the current projection as one, well, it's identified two ways. One, it's one in the decommissioning plan where our projection is that it's not something that we would try to continue after 2033. More recently, in response to the governor's request, the university has said that they would prepare to decommission UCURT on the TMT timescale in order to meet that request. But since the university owns the facility, we are free to do that on our own decision.
So let me ask again, what entity would be financially responsible for decommissioning the UCURT now that the university owns it?
University of Hawaii.
I see. And where would they derive those funds?
In connection with our agreement with the United Kingdom to terminate their sublease and for the university to acquire ownership, we received funds that were set aside specifically for the purpose of the eventual decommissioning.
Okay, well, thank you. And has Hokukea announced its notice of intent?
Yes, I believe that was submitted.
And was that voluntary?
I wasn't involved in that, so it was presumably voluntary on the part of who did it, yes. But it depends on what you mean by voluntary, and I don't have any first-hand knowledge of it.
I see. Would it be reasonable to say that the University of Hawaii would be overseeing the deconstruction of 3 to 4 other telescopes during the same decade that the 30-meter telescope would be constructed?
No.
So, but you're saying at least 3?
Oh, during the same decade. I'm sorry.
At least 3 and maybe more? I mean, that's the way I read your testimony.
I think, well, if I understand correctly what you said, I think that's implicit in the commitment.
Okay. Does the general lease offer any provisions for extension?
No. Okay. Well, in the lease itself, no.
Okay. And I know this question's been answered, but the general lease does call for site restoration at the termination of the lease, and you were a little bit equivocal about that, so I want to find out what you mean by that.
If I recall correctly, there is actually some statement to the effect that the land board could allow, in certain circumstances, abandonment in place. And the reason I hedged on that is my understanding that in the current situation, it's unlikely that such an allowance would be made. So I think that while technically it might say that, as a practical matter, my opinion, that be removed.
I'm sorry, the last.
As a practical matter, the facility the requirement would be to remove it.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, I did a very quick Google search on abandonment in place and found 9 other facilities, 3 of which were in America. So it occurs to me that that is a possibility. It's one of the reasons that I'm asking these questions.
But it's not an option.
It's not an option as far as you're concerned, or not a legal option?
It's not an option in the master lease.
Okay. So do any of the facilities that we currently have, the 13 that are up there, do they allow for abandonment in place?
Technically, yes, I think they do. The 13, yes.
And what entity would be accountable for decommissioning those facilities if they were abandoned in place?
University.
University.
Right, they're on our supplement.
Okay. I noticed in the document that you have in front of you on page 9 through 10 that the estimate for decommissioning the Gemini in the year 2008 was $9 million. Yes, Gemini was $9 million. Do you think that that is a reasonable estimate for decommissioning a telescope?
Sorry, I missed the
on page
preliminary.
9 through 10 of A3, the Gemini, it says the estimate for decommissioning the Gemini, the numbers in 2008 was $9 million to decommission the Gemini. Do you think that's a reasonable estimate, or do you think that another range would be appropriate?
A3 is the comprehensive management plan, is that correct?
A3 is the comprehensive management plan, yeah. I think so.
So that's a 2009 document with an estimate of 8 to 9 million for Gemini.
9 million. Mm-hmm.
9 million. I think it would take at least that amount.
Okay. So
I'm sorry, but A3 is the final EIS.
A13.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that. A13 is the decommissioning plan, is that what you want?
That's correct.
Okay.
So if we were to do something like 10 million times 13, it would be a considerable responsibility for the University of Hawaii.
If the university had to bear that entire responsibility, yes, it would be considerable.
Are you aware of any bonding that the telescopes have placed in escrow, or I don't know the right current term for it?
In the case of UCURT, I mentioned that we have the funds.
Mm-hmm.
It's also true in the case of James Clerk Maxwell Telescope. At the time that the decommissioning plan, well, actually the comprehensive management plan was done, each of the observatories was asked to send a letter reaffirming their commitment, their understanding of the requirements, and also any indication that they could give of how they would fund the decommissioning. And some of them were more provided more detail than others, but all clearly indicated they can do it, and some explained that they were setting funds aside or where they would other means of getting the resources. So yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, there's some kind of a verbal affirmation, if not a commitment.
Well, you'd have to read the letters to see that.
Dr. McClaren, finally, can you say yes or no, if the TMT were permitted and constructed, would sufficient funds be committed to decommission and deconstruct by the current termination of the general lease in 2033?
Yes.
How is that?
It's a requirement.
By whom?
It's a requirement of the sublease.
But the sublease has been vacated.
I don't think so.
Judge Nakamura has remanded that consideration back to the board.
So are you arguing now with the witness? Just a minute, sir.
Yep.
Are you arguing with him? He's answered your question.
I see. So as far as you're concerned, the sublease is still in place?
Yes.
I see. And do you know the terms of the sublease? with regard to when the funds would begin to accrue after the construction is completed?
All I'm referring to is that the sublease has a requirement that the DIO must remove the facility and pay for the cost, and I believe that they would meet that commitment whenever it is necessary for them to meet it.
Are you familiar with the terms of the sublease that say that?
I couldn't quote them verbatim, no. But
Okay, thank you.
I'm familiar with the thrust of it.
Thank you, Dr. McClaren.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Ward. Dr. McClaren, I'm going to excuse you for the day. I think we're going to end the testimony. Thank you very much. Okay, I want to thank everybody for your patience and cooperation today. Earlier, Ms. Kakalia referenced Mr. Hayes. What happened was during I think it was the noon hour, she approached me and reminded me that she had not had an opportunity to cross-examine Mr. Hayes when he was testifying, and I told her that when he comes back, she would have a chance to do so after Mr. Fergestrom, and we also we'll give the opportunity to Mr. Kealoha should he choose to take it. So that, I'm not sure when Mr. Hayes is coming back, but I want to note that we have 3 more people before he finishes, and then of course the university has the opportunity to redirect should they choose to do so. Okay, so that's Fergestrom, Kakalia, Kealoha. And we don't have a date for Mr. Hayes yet because we have a number of other scheduling issues that you might remember that Judge Heen, I think, is expected to testify, and he has to testify on a Tuesday. So it's going to have to be the 15th, I think. Is that right?
We're prepared to address a proposed schedule for the week of the 14th at this time, if you'd like us to.
Okay, well, I hate to mess everybody up, but I've been trying for a week to clear my own schedule, and the only date I couldn't clear was the 14th. I've pushed everything else and made these days that we talked about available, but I can't do the 14th, so we won't be having a hearing on the 14th.
We're prepared to make a suggestion for the 15th.
Okay, so let me first, if you don't mind, because I do have on my list of things to get to your scheduling. So there will not be a hearing on the 14th. Let me repeat the days that we will have hearing, and I've just confirmed with Mr. Kane that we're confirmed with the Nanilo on these days. So we will resume on November 15th. November 16th is a hearing day, and November 18th. In December, we have December 1, 2, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12, 13, 16, 19, and 20. And so depending on where we are at the end of the first week, maybe in December, we'll need to talk a little bit about how much more we might need and then look at our January schedules, if that's what it takes. But we won't know until we keep going. So at this point, if you don't mind,
given the witness availability, we would like to go with Walter Heen first thing on Tuesday morning, and then if we can get complete Judge Heen's testimony on Tuesday, we would like to proceed with Jessie Eiben. Both of these witnesses are only available on Tuesdays.
His last name is spelled?
I believe it's E-I-B-E-N.
And what is the offer of proof on Judge Heen?
Judge Heen will
Just
testify.
generally.
Management of Mauna Kea management.
He's going to,
Management of Mauna Kea through the Office of Mauna Kea Management, so it will have to do with that entity's management of the mountain.
and how is he related to that?
He was the initial director of the Office of Mauna Kea Management and has been involved in its in the evolution of the management, and he has been highly involved in the evolution of the management.
When was he the director?
I do not have the date on the tip of my tongue.
Was it before or after his judgeship?
After his judgeship. It was something he did in retirement.
So it was in the 2000s?
It was in the 2000s.
Okay, I understand. And just Jessie Eiben?
Jessie Eiben is a biologist and will testify as to the biological impacts of the 30-meter telescope.
Okay, understood. So those two are set for the 15th?
Yes, we'll set those for the 15th, and we'd like to proceed with Judge Heen first.
Okay, and then the 16th?
On the 16th, because both Dr. McClaren and Jim Hayes are available, if possible, we would like to finish with Dr. McClaren and bring Jim Hayes back for the remaining three cross-examination.
Okay.
If optimistically, we would like to finish with Judge Heen on the 15th and finish with Jessie Eiben off the 15th. If we're able to do that, we would like to bring back Dr. McClaren to finish his testimony on the 16th and Jim Hayes to finish his testimony on the 16th.
Shouldn't we take Mr. Hayes first, since there's only three?
I would be happy to do that.
That way he doesn't...
Yes, we're amenable to that.
So let's plan on that. And as you know, we're not going to be giving any commitments about Tuesdays, so if Mr. Eiben is unable to complete, we'll just have to reschedule him for another Tuesday.
I think that's how it's working, yes.
If we can finish, we will, but, you know...
We're prepared to be flexible.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. And how many more witnesses, just in general, does the university have?
I would have to go back and look. Honestly, we've been juggling this so much this afternoon. I've kind of lost sight of that, but it's not too many more, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, if you take a moment, I can go look at our master witness list.
Okay. I just want to give everybody sort of an overview of where we might be. I think we're all getting a sense of the timing.
Yeah. So we have proposed Clifford Smith, who is yet to testify, Fritz Klassner.
I just need a number.
Oh, 1, 2, 3. We have 9.
Okay, so you're looking at probably that first week in November.
Yes. Yes, Your Honor.
So TIO,
December.
I'm sorry. My mind's someplace else. So I'm sorry. I understand it's December. Thank you. So TIO would probably be going in that latter part of the first week, or perhaps that second week, somewhere's around there. So you can start to get your witnesses ready, I think. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. We'll get a better sense of the timing as we move forward.
Yes, I think we're pretty well lined up for next week, and then we'll see how far we can get.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Let's see. During the noon recess, I also had a chat with Mrs. Holy, my witness, and she has asked to go last after all of you are done. I offered her to go out of place if we thought we could work on that, but she wants to be here, so that's fine. And she said that she will also be submitting direct testimony like everybody else in writing, and also possibly some exhibits that she wants to submit, and that's fine. And if you have objections to that, I'll hear from you before we leave today. So Mrs. Holy, you're here nodding your head. Is that all good with you? Okay, so I just wanted to let everyone know. I don't have anything else on my housekeeping list, so I want to open it up to each of you. Mr. Sanderson, anything for the UH?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, TIO, Shinyama? Okay, and Ms. Ward? Good. Ms. Pishota?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Ching? No, Your Honor. Okay. Mr. Flores?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Mr. Kayama?
Just a small housekeeping. At some point, you guys will identify the CV for Mr. McClaren and what exhibit that is.
8127.
127. Okay. That's it, Your Honor.
Okay, great. Mr. Fergestrom? Could you come to the microphone, because I know you want to say something, and I want to be sure we record it.
I'm Harry Ferguson. If I'm not mistaken, because of the late receiving of documents from the University of Hawaii, Mr. White was supposed to be, we were supposed to be able to still cross him because we didn't have access to the documentation while he was on the stand. That was myself and Mr. Vicente.
Yes.
Do we have an idea when he might be recalled?
Well, are you saying that you have reviewed everything and are prepared to cross-examine him?
By the time he's going to be back, yes.
Well, what is the reason that we would be recalling him? What is your offer of proof?
Well, we hadn't had the opportunity to review the documentation.
Yes, and now you have. So what is it that he would be coming back to testify about?
I haven't been able to review all of it yet.
Well, when you have a chance to review it all, you let us know, and then you make your offer of proof as to what exactly you're going to cross-examine about, and then we will arrange to have him brought back.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Ms. Kihoy, anything for you? No? Mr. Kanuha is gone, not present. Mr. Ashida? All right, thank you. Ms. Slightholm? Nothing. Mr. Sinkin? Oh, you moved too fast.
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to join with the point that was raised by Ms. Ward beginning the day, that I've now begun the process of limiting cross-examination, or at least halting people to determine whether to limit cross-examination. I have many objections to that whole process, which I cannot move in a motion for reconsideration until you issue a minute order.
There won't be a minute order for that.
There will not be a minute order for that.
Nope.
So reconsideration is now open?
No, you can file a motion.
File a motion, okay. I'll try that.
Okay. Mr. Kanaele? Gone. Not here. Mr. Vicente, anything for you?
Nothing for me.
All right. And, Mr. Vicente, by the way, same thing as Mr. Fergestrom. After you've had a chance to review all the documents and you think you need to call or recall Mr. White, all I need is a request and tell us why you need him, and we'll arrange to bring him back. Okay? Mr. Kealoha? Ms. Freitas? Anything for you? Nothing for you. Oh, you're going to speak for Mr. Freitas? All right.
Cindy Freitas, proxying William Freitas. We had this, he had discussed about the phone conference or some kind of conference because this out of order position with witness, it's getting very close to the holidays, and he wants to know if he's still considering that phone conference or some kind of technology conference.
I am not adverse to technology. Whatever you can use to help and keep the cost down, that's fine.
Okay.
But it is difficult because, I mean, I've done it in a courtroom setting, and they have to be able to hear and see, you know, all the examiners, as you know.
Yes.
It's going to need to be a back and forth, and everyone in the room is going to need to see the witness's testimony as well, because you're looking at what they're saying and listening, of course. So that's where it becomes a little bit cumbersome. And I have used Skype before in somewhat of a formal setting. It's not too easy because it's sometimes unreliable.
Yes.
So it'll be in the middle of something and then it cuts and then you're stuck. And so that's the kind of thing, if you can work on something, maybe it's more reliable now, I don't know, and you can test it out here, I'm open to that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and also, you can see the pace, so if it's better to go after the holidays, right now it looks like we're going to have
after January.
Well, it looks like.
Okay, but we'll try to test that technology as well at home.
And you hear all the requirements, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Sure. Ms. Ward?
Judge, I just counted the testimonies that we have coming up. Besides finishing Dr. McClaren and finishing Mr. Hayes, we have 8 more UH people and 8 more TIO people. So it looks like that may go all the way through December, if I'm counting correctly.
Well, you know, typically witness lists, even after I ask for final witness lists, because of the testimony that's given, witnesses drop off because people decide they're not necessary anymore or whatever. So it is what it is. If there's 16, we'll do it. That's what we have to do. But if there are fewer, then the other guys have to be ready to go. So I'm trying to think or make everyone prepared for at least a step ahead. I don't want you to be surprised when it's your turn to put your witnesses on. So as I said, we have to kind of measure it every day, be flexible, and we'll get a rhythm.
Okay.
I hope we have a rhythm.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Ward. Everybody, thank you very much. We'll see you on November the 15th. I appreciate your presence, and those who are observing, I appreciate your interest. Thank you very much. Be well.